Hello. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Just getting started here. Let's get things set up. Yeah, I'm enjoying this new topic too, but we'll see how long I can sustain it before I get burnt out again. Howdy. Don't mind me. We're just pulling things up. Grimlock, thank you for the $5. As always, W Grimlock in the chat because Grimlock and, one or two others are single-handedly keeping this live stream afloat. Oh no, the bad blood pressure live. Yeah, that's a fair assessment. We'll do our best though. We'll try to keep things chill. Let me pull up my notes. Okay, I still have some reading to do, but that's fine. That is fine. What's the prompt? Wait, what do you mean what's the prompt? It's behind me. It's not the immortal science of Trumpism, Leninism. True. It's cut off. Oh. Let me check to see if that's okay. But for some reason it like rearranges when I bring a guest on. Which is really annoying, and I don't know why that happens. But like let me know if when a guest comes on, it let me know when a guest comes on if it like moves. Yeah, Trumpism, Leninism. You would be surprised. There are so many people that have wacky beliefs. I don't know why, like why it's cut off. That doesn't make any sense to me. But, we can't explain everything. Why are you against his belief? Whose belief? Trump's? Well, look, if Trump was pro-science, then I wouldn't be making this content. They're a result of a failed prediction of but rather GR breaks down. Sorry, I'm responding to comments. Anyway, so here we are. Oh, I should send out the announcement. Oh, I did send out the announcement. How's Biden for science when he can't even finish the sentence? I didn't say anything about Biden. Weird how Biden lives rent-free in your heads, though. Womp womp. Is Trump pro mini superspace? No, he's not. Do a dark matter debate stream. Why? That's not really worth any, like, debating whether or not dark matter exists isn't really worth anything because that's just an empirical question. They always look like this. You mean like sharp jawline? High cheekbones? The positive canthal tilt or whatever the word is. I don't even know if this is AI. I didn't make this background. Somebody else made it for me. It might be AI. Maybe. If you got a better background though, feel free to send it to me. I just don't have the time or the skill really to make a good background. Why do MAGA want to kill the climate? Yeah, it's a good question. What did Trump do against science? I'm not political. Oh, look at the recent budget cuts. Like the recent budget cuts kill basically all of the scientific missions of NASA. and the NSF. Well, not all of the scientific missions of the NSF, but many of the scientific goals of the NSF and the NIH. Um, and it's not like this is going towards fixing the budget to, reduce spending, because the DoD budget is going up. Yeah, stay calm and linear. Exactly. Yeah, I need to. I'm gonna put some notes together like Ian does. Goals. Stay calm and linear. Don't let them drag me down a rabbit hole. Okay, those are 2 goals. I'm easily distracted. And also I tend to jump from place to place. So you just want to jump on the whole environment issue and argue that BS? I mean, the environment the environment issue is a serious issue, but it's not just climate science that MAGA is against. It's like all of the science. MAGA and science make like water and potassium. That's a good point. MAGA right out the gate with ad hominems. Yeah, true. Budget cuts means global warming. No, saying climate change is a hoax means global warming, I guess, if that person's in charge. I should mute this guy though, because he's spamming. Can have a 5-minute timeout, Jim. He's pro-privatization, which means that science will have to be directed towards profit. Yeah, and that's stupid. Because science is not a short-term profit-making endeavor, right? That's just not it's not how science operates. And yet, we know that science is very beneficial to societies in the long term. So can you add a third? It's GRW, not GZW. I always say GZW, and that's because there's a GZW approximation that I always get mixed up on. What are your feelings on technocracy? I don't think that I don't like it. I think that there should be requirements for informed people to be consulted. I think that that's a good idea. But I don't think that it's because there's a difference between what's true about the world and what policy we make that's informed by what's true about the world. I think that it's the responsibility of a government to make sure that they're properly informed and know what's true about the world. But then it's a matter of public decision making, democratic decision making, etc., as to what to do with that information. Host, are you able to define the noun woman? You can't answer. Well, that's an interesting question, but it seems unrelated to the question. Yeah, MAGA can only talk about gender stuff and immigrants. True. War stimulates lots of innovation, not the good kind. Dude, don't tell me you're some left-leaning trans guy that is against Charlie Kirk. What? Well, I'm not trans. Generally, you don't get a big honker like this if you're trans. But that's setting it aside. Yeah, Charlie Kirk's like an idiot, but science is holding the very fabric of our existence. True, that's a fair point. A fair assessment. Yes, how is gender not related to science? Well, no, the definition of a woman is not a scientific thing. That's a linguistic thing, right? What is it called? Linguistics is not, it's not a science. That's a humanities, a liberal art, if you will. Now, gender, on the other hand, can be studied scientifically, but definitions can't be. That's just what a word means. It's not very supportive of science to call people of a group the same because of your feelings. Well, no, this is like scientifically assessed, actually, interestingly enough. You can actually assess these claims, and they have been demonstrated to be true. Oh, somebody showed up, but then they left. Okay, well, keep liking the live. We can get more people in here, and then we can have some conversations. Are you for or against MAGA? I can't tell. That's a great question. If you don't like science, you might think that I'm actually for MAGA, which would be interesting, right?
Hello.
Eli, how's it going?
Hey. Do you know who Brent Peterson is?
No idea who that is.
I
Wanna tell me
searched
about
him up. He was the best candidate. That's all I really got to say.
Okay. Thanks for being here.
All right, thanks.
Brent Peterson. Okay, let's see. Canadian former professional. Probably not that guy. Do Cash App donations link to your super chats? They don't. I don't know how to make them work, but if you send a Cash App thing, I will see it on my phone. So, yeah. So there's a lot of like MAGAs. By the way, this stream isn't explicitly political. This is a descriptive, not prescriptive claim, right? Like it is descriptively true that MAGA is, you know, anti-science, if you will. Like the policies as promoted by MAGA politicians are like descriptively anti-science. Now, whether that's a good or a bad thing, I'm not making that claim. I'm not making a claim about the left. I'm not making a claim about the value of these things. I'm just making a descriptive claim, right? Now, I happen to think that it's a bad thing to be anti-science, but look, I'm not here to debate that. Mr. Clean, how's it going?
Hey, can I ask a question? Why is MAGA supposedly anti-science? And you said policies. What policies are anti-science?
Yeah, so the recent budget proposal for 2026 cuts all of the research science division for NASA, and it cuts significant science research projects for the NSF, and it cuts significant research projects for the NIH. These are like basic scientific investigations that are just being cut so that we can build more F-35s.
Okay, that's a good point. And do you mean anti-science is like they don't believe in science?
They don't believe in science and they don't like science.
Okay, and like what? I'm starting to feel like the science they don't believe in, is that just, did they just don't believe in any science at all? No climate change, no.
Climate science, medical science, space science frequently, biological science, neuroscience. I mean, it depends on who you ask. You'll get more fringy people end up like denying like paleontology, but you know, generally it's like medical science in the form of like virology, epidemiology, etc. Climate science in the form of climate change denial, and evolution or biological science in the form of evolution, and neuroscience in the form of gender stuff.
Are they cutting this for the big beautiful bill?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. Remember, y'all to like the live so then we can get more people in here. Ben, how's it going?
What's up, Dr. Blitz? How you doing?
I'm doing okay. Are you MAGA?
No, but I think I found some disagreement with you today.
Yeah, okay.
Just watching the live for a little bit.
What's the disagreement here?
Yeah, so I would just like to challenge you on this. I don't think it's accurate to say MAGA is anti-science. I believe that they are they don't trust the institutions to interpret and then deliver that science, quote unquote, or data to the public. I think that's way more accurate than saying
they're
MAGA
also
is
not
just
interested in funding science either.
Well, that's because they don't believe the institutions are capable of like.
So what does it mean to be anti-science, except you're not interested in supporting scientists, you don't believe scientists, and you're not interested in doing science?
I don't. Okay, so
like that's anti-science.
Well, so you're a physicist, right?
Yep.
So like, how do you find like new science or like new information that's came to the public?
In my field or in other fields?
Just in your field, like when you're day-to-day.
I go to the archive, which is a preprint server where people post their new articles before they get peer reviewed, and I read those.
Yeah, so but what if you believe that that archive was compromised in some way?
Then I would go to other sources. I would go to the peer-reviewed publications.
Yeah, but what if you believed all of these things were compromised?
Then I'd be deluded.
Okay, yeah, but fair, but you would still be a physicist, right? Who believes in science, just diluted in another manner.
Well, so I suspect not, because in order for me to believe that these places are compromised, whatever that means, like keep in mind the archive is like not like a for-profit thing. But anyway, Supposing that were the case, supposing that I thought that it was compromised, well, that would mean that I would have to distrust all the things that are being put there for one reason
Right.
or another. And that would mean that I don't have the scientific literacy to actually evaluate the content that's going there. Which would
That
make
might
me, which would make me like essentially not pro science, or at least not a scientist anyway.
Okay. All right. Well, so like for me, like example, right? I have no idea. Like honestly, I believe the Earth is round, right? But I have no
Hmm.
way to prove it. Like I don't know the math that goes into it. I just trust people to tell me that, and I have like
Hmm.
I can say with like 99.99% certainty that the Earth is probably round, right?
Yep.
But I'm trusting so many people who
Yeah.
I've never interacted with or the
Hmm.
methodology they use to come to that truth, right?
Yeah. And
And I think that
generally
MAGA
speaking,
just
that's
doesn't
a good
believe in that process.
Right, and that's an explicitly like anti-scientific viewpoint. Like if you're not willing to listen to experts, especially expert consensus, that is how we develop well-informed beliefs, right? Like one person cannot be an expert in everything. And so an epistemologically sound way of coming to beliefs about things that, you're not an expert in is to just listen to the people who are experts in it. Now, they might be wrong occasionally, but 99% of the time, they will give you the right answer. And so like that is a way for a layperson to be pro science, is to listen to what the people who spent their life studying the thing say about the thing, because they're more likely to be right than you are.
Yeah, but like you acknowledge that I'm not using empiricism. I am just simply following people who.
I'm not saying you don't have to be. Lay people don't have to be scientists in order to be pro science.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I'm just saying I don't know.
And
I just see
lay
where
people don't lay people can also be anti-science by just saying no, people who studied this their entire lives, they're just wrong. I shouldn't trust them on anything. Like that's an anti-scientific epistemology, right?
But like you acknowledge that there's times where people have used the science community to do things that were anti-science, right?
Can you give me examples?
Like hey, this person has like a knot in their skull. They're not actually human, or
They have a knot in there. Are you talking about like what is it? Starts with PH. Like the skull shape science stuff that from like the
yeah,
1800s or whatever. Yeah, sure.
yeah. So I think that's what
Phrenology,
people are
that's what it is.
scared of. Yeah, people are like
Um,
worried about that kind of stuff.
so if people were worried about that, they wouldn't just disregard expert consensus. They would go and learn it. They would go and see, is there actually something wrong with the scientific studies that are being done? Or is it just like, because consider this. Suppose that you were living in the 1800s and, there was the scientific consensus of phrenology or whatever, which we now recognize as like not being a scientific thing. But suppose that you were just a normal person and there were people who were studying, space, uh, well, the sky anyway, stars, astronomers, and there were phrenologers, and there were, people who were studying like other forms of medicine, and there were people who were studying botany. How would you be able to figure out which of those sciences were good?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
The thing is you wouldn't, unless you actually went to the field and studied it, right? Unless you actually went and became a botanist or became a phrenologist or whatever, or you studied the literature, then you wouldn't have a good heuristic of figuring out that botany is a good science and phrenology is a bad science. So even though you would have been wrong, you would have been epistemologically justified in holding the view that what the scientists say is probably true. You would have been justified in holding that view, and you would have been right on almost everything.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm happy that we had that back and forth. But I mean, are you generally aware to that, like aware of that dynamic going on with MAGA? That I
Yeah,
think it's like more of an
that they don't trust
institution.
authority, and that's turned from them not trusting people who are telling them to do things to them not trusting people who are telling them how the world is, which is delusional.
Okay, that's my piece then.
All right, well, thanks for being here.
I appreciate you, man.
By the way, how does the centering look when I have a guest on? All right, let's bring up My Puppy's Palace. By the way, remember to like the live. It's a good way to get this sent out to more people.
Hello.
My Puppy, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm doing all right. Are you MAGA slash, do you think that MAGA is pro-science?
Somewhat, but I'm just kind of slightly in opposition with what your statement is. So you're
Yeah,
saying
okay.
that MAGA is anti-science, right?
Yes.
And that's because they're cutting funding to
No, it's because
organizations.
they're cutting funding because the messaging is explicitly anti-science, namely like you shouldn't trust XYZ scientific consensus. You have politicians and mainstream news media outlets that are pro-MAGA promoting conspiracy theories about what is true about the world in direct contradiction with the scientific consensus. Um, it's basically all of it. It's not just funding cuts. Funding cuts is just the real world political impact that this is having.
But don't you think inherently when you say that MAGA is cutting funding, doesn't that inherently mean that they are still funding these organizations and supporting funding?
So NASA does two things. NASA does space exploration and space research. NASA, they're essentially cutting all of the relevant space research by like 50%. And they're increasing funding. They're taking that funding and using it to increase space exploration, like putting a man on the moon again for some reason. Um, so yeah, like the funding that is so NASA is having like half of its budget being cut, and it's having things like the physics of the cosmos, which used to get $100 million or so a year, I think, used to get about $100 million or so a year to study things like gravitational waves, to do like figure out where we came from, where we're going, these important questions. It cut that down to $0.
Okay.
So like serious scientific investigations are just being completely cut, and rather that money, some of that money anyway, is being funneled towards let's build bigger rockets, give the money to Elon Musk, and then send people to the moon again. Not for scientific reasons, just so we can flex.
Well, it seems like
to
is
China.
this you're very focused on space, and I get that you're a physicist.
Well, I mean that's one of the most egregious things that's happening right now with regards to the budget bill.
But then you're making a statement that's like black and white that they're anti-science. But
Well,
you're
yeah,
giving
I
an
mean
example.
also Donald Trump has called climate change a hoax, right?
I get it, but
And
it doesn't mean that
it
it's a
was
total
MAGA Republicans who were
representation of
pushing
MAGA.
for intelligent design in schools, right?
Yes, but you're
And
making
it
a
was
blanket statement that I feel like just because
yes,
one person
and
says something
it's
that
empirically shown, by the way, in the data that MAGA conservatives, specifically MAGA conservatives, not anti-MAGA Republicans, specifically MAGA conservatives, are more prone to lean into conspiracies and more likely to reject scientific expertise. That's borne out in the data.
okay, but it doesn't mean they're anti all science. You're just saying they're more anti-science than you're saying that liberals are, or maybe left-leaning people. Is that what you're saying? Or are you saying they're totally anti-science?
I don't know what the difference you're making is. The point is
Well, I'm
as a
saying
political
that there is
political
science that
movement,
they're
they are
supporting.
not in favor of the scientific
Do you
investigation. As a
consider
political movement,
economics at all a form of science? Do you consider
you
data
might
science?
consider it a social science. I'm specifically talking about hard sciences here.
But I do believe that Trump does believe in medical research. He's just cutting
Then
some
why is he
research
cutting
because
NIH so much? Why is he cutting the NIH?
he's not cutting all NIH funding. He's not saying we
Yeah,
shouldn't.
because if he cut all NIH funding, well, to be clear, I don't actually think he's legally able to cut all NIH funding because that was constructed by
But
Congress.
he's not advocating for that. If he believed that, I feel like he'd say something like that. Like, we should just
Okay,
abolish.
so you're right. They just want to get rid of half of our science. You're right. You definitely sold the point that MAGA is not anti-science. They just want to get rid of half of the science.
But then why would they fund science if they're totally anti-science? Why would he himself in his mind believe that? Why, like, he would say that I don't want to fund any science because it's totally false. It's all a hoax. But he doesn't believe that. He does believe in medical research. He's not saying that.
You're right.
He's
He
just
only wants to cut half
concerned.
of the science. You got me there.
I just think it's a blanket statement that's not
Yep, it
entirely
is a blanket
true.
statement.
But I guess I just respectfully disagree.
Okay. Well, thanks for being here.
Of course.
Like, I mean, like, he came on and wanted to tone police. All right, let's talk to Tyler Sack. Tyler Sack, how's it going? Angry Long Island Vet. I have a feeling that this guy's not going to disagree with me. Angry Long Island Vet, how's it going?
Come on, buddy.
Are you MAGA?
I am.
Oh, okay. Do you think that climate change is real?
Do you think they get it wrong all the time? About maybe at least 50 times?
So do you usually answer questions with other questions?
Yeah, do you?
Oh no, I usually answer the question that I'm asked. So I'll ask you again. Do you think that climate change is real?
Here's my follow-up question to
Sorry.
answer your
You
question.
don't get to ask a follow-up question until you answer my
No,
question.
no.
This is a
If you
very
want
easy
me to
question.
answer, I'm going to answer my way. You
Yeah,
can't
so-
dictate how
so-
I want to answer.
So the answer should
So you
be
can't dictate
yes
how
because
if you
or
want,
no
you
because.
either want to answer or you don't. So you want to ignore. So you just
No,
want to
I
ignore
just want to
it.
hear
It's
your
just
answer.
like
I just want to
Orange
hear your
Man
answer.
bad. That's what you want to hear. Orange
No, I
Man
just want
bad.
to hear your answer.
Orange Man
I
hates
would
science.
love to hear your
Is that
answer.
what you wanna hear?
You're
Orange
really
Man
living up to your
hates
name.
science. Yeah, very good.
So do you think climate change is real?
So do you want me to answer the question?
So you can answer by saying no because, and I'll let you talk. But
No.
I just want to know yes or no.
So you want me to answer specifically in your way. So
It
it's
is a
not
yes or
really
no
an
question.
answer.
So it's a yes or no question,
You just
and then you
want to
can
hear what
explain.
you want to hear.
Look,
No, you just want
if you
to
said
hear what
if
you
you
want
said
to hear
yes
is basically what you're
because,
saying.
you can say yes because,
So
or you can say no
let
because.
me ask you this one question.
So
Let me ask you
I
this
will
one
answer
question.
I will answer whatever
If
question you ask. You
No,
ask
let me ask
after
you
you answer my
this
question.
one question, dude.
Look,
So
I'm sorry.
if-
This is my live
If
stream.
Trump was
If you can't even answer a
proven
single
for
question,
science, you
then
would
you're
lose
not,
your
you don't really belong here.
little 593 pages. Table.
Sorry.
Orange Man bad. I got it.
This
Dude,
has
you
nothing.
think
This has
I'm
nothing
sorry,
to
you
do
got
with Orange Man
PhD,
Bad.
right?
This is a descriptive statement. I do have a PhD.
No,
Now,
it's
can you answer the question or
absolutely
no?
everything to do with Orange Man bad and
Not really.
climate change. Like, so you
Not
like
really,
to follow
no.
science, right? You like to follow all the scientists. Remind me.
So,
And all the scientists
just to
never
be
get it
clear,
wrong,
this is
right?
like the 5th time that you've now dodged the question. Do you think that climate change is real?
Just to be clear, if you want me to answer, I'm going to answer my way, not your way.
Yeah. Well,
Just to be
okay,
clear.
please answer.
But
Yeah,
you
go
seem
ahead.
to be really slow in comprehending that.
Yeah, go ahead and answer.
Okay. So, how many times have scientists got it wrong when it comes to climate change overall in the course of history?
Wait, was that an answer to my question?
I said I'm going to
don't
answer
know-
my
I
way.
still don't
You
know what
seem
your
really
belief is.
slow in comprehending.
Well, wait a minute. Hold on. I'm just.
You seem really slow in
Maybe
comprehending.
you're right. Maybe I am slow. But typically, when
No,
somebody
so,
asks a yes or no
like,
question,
if
the
you
answer
like
usually
baby
starts
steps, I can
with yes
baby
or no.
step.
Well, no. I just want to know what your beliefs are. Then we can talk about whether or
Does
not they go
every
right.
answer start with yes or no? Does
If it's
every
a yes or-
answer
if it's a yes
start
or
with
no
yes or no?
question-
Because it seems like
Well,
you can't
look.
answer a
So
question. It seems
Angry
like
Long
you
Island
can't answer
said-
a question either.
You seem so
I got it. Orange Man bad.
Angry.
You're
Angry.
Just so you know,
Chill.
your PhD
You're not
is
showing.
absolutely
You're not making a
Your
good showing for
PhD
your side, by the way.
Like, do you wake up with nightmares? Do you wake
So-
up with nightmares about Trump?
No, I don't think about him at all. Angry.
Do you wake up with nightmares about Trump?
Angry. To be clear,
Oh,
there are a
you
few
answered the question.
ways.
I'm very
There are a few
question.
ways. I'm sorry. You have to let me actually get a sentence out. So there are a few ways you can answer a yes or no question. You could answer yes because, no because, or you could say I actually think the question is ill posed because. Those are roughly the 3 ways that you can answer a yes or no question in an honest and genuine way. Now, if you want to avoid the question and pivot, by all means do that. But I'm not going to let you get off this topic because it seems like you're afraid to answer.
Oh, that's cute. You muted my mic because you didn't want to
Yeah,
hear my
good.
answer.
You wouldn't let me. You wouldn't actually let me finish a sentence. So you have to, have a back and forth. I assume.
I
that
kind of like you're
interested
not
in
letting me
back and
finish
forth,
either.
right?
You don't even let me. You won't even let me answer a question.
Well,
But you
look,
just want it your way.
I want an answer to a question, but asking another question isn't an answer. Right?
Well, to refine to get more to the if you like.
Are you asking? Is that a clarifying question for you? Is there something that wasn't clear about the question that you need cleared up?
I'm really dumbfounded that you have a PhD. Like, are you sure? What is exactly your PhD in?
It's in physics. Now, do you want to answer the question because that was dodge number 6?
It seems like you're kind of dodging. So if you want me to
asked
answer
you one question, and
I
you
can
can't
answer your way. I can pretend to answer your way if you like it that way.
I just want to know what you believe.
You're not gonna get
is real.
You're not gonna get a real answer if I'm gonna answer it your way.
Look, I'm asking you
So it's
about
not
what
really-
your beliefs are. I'm asking you about what your belief is. Do you believe that climate change is real?
Do I believe in what? Science?
Do you believe that climate change is real? It's a very simple question.
Oh, I don't know. Let's see. Winter, summer. That would be climate changing. Very good.
Okay, so you should have asked a clarifying question then, namely, what do I mean by climate change? Because that's not what I mean by climate change.
You're contradicting yourself now. Because you said I should have answered the.
Yeah. So
and
I did say.
another question.
I did
So
say that
you
you
want
can
me
ask
to
a
answer your way?
clarifying
Is what you're
question.
saying?
You can ask a clarifying question
So
if
I
you're
was
confused.
asking you a question.
Mhm.
I was asking you a question that you refused to answer.
Well, look.
But
So were you confused about what I asked?
I was asking you a question that you refused to answer. But when I gave you an answer, you said you just said I should have asked a different
Well,
different
no.
question.
Look. If you were confused by the
You're
question,
not
that's
very
fine.
smart, man. You're not.
If
You're
you were
not like
so
you
Long
have
Island,
like no common sense at all.
Long Island, are you capable of
Let me
having
ask
like
you
a
this.
back and forth conversation, or
Let
do you
me
just
ask
want
you.
to like shout
Let
over
me
each
ask you
other?
this one.
Because
Well,
I
bro,
can just
bro,
mic mog you the whole time if you
question.
want. Like
Okay,
do
whatever.
you want to do that, or do you want to have a back
You
and
seem
forth?
really close to that microphone, bro.
I
Are
mean,
you
we
like
can do a
kissing
back
that
and
thing?
forth.
It's
Do
fucking
you
weird.
want to have a back and forth conversation, or do you want to just like shout over
Do
each
that
other?
again. Do that again.
Well, I'd rather have a back and
I do
forth.
want to shower you over there. I see.
Oh,
Seems very productive.
yeah. So I mean, like, or we could have a genuine conversation, do a
Well,
back and
no,
forth.
you just want to hear yourself talk. You just want to
Well,
hear
if I
yourself
wanted
talk.
to hear myself talk, A, I wouldn't have invited you to unmute yourself, and B, I wouldn't be bringing
That's
up
why you
questions.
just won't shut up right now. I mean, that's
I
why you just won't shut up right now.
I'm just responding to things that you
Because
say.
you keep interrupting.
But anyway,
No,
so
you keep interrupting. There's a
so
difference.
to,
Big difference.
I'm pretty sure I'm talking when you finish talking. So when I say climate change, I'm not referring to
I'm
summer and
pretty sure
winter. I'm
you
referring to a
guys know what
long-term
you do.
behavior of the climate on average over 100 plus years. That's what I'm referring to. So maybe
Oh,
that helps
the
to answer your
climate on
question.
average. So the climate
Yeah.
on average is actually down. And now, are we talking about since the existence of the Earth being the earliest known fact, or what are we doing? What are we talking
No,
about
no,
here?
I'm talking
Talking
about
about what since
pre-industrial
man
levels. I'm
since
talking
man
about
since man been on Earth.
no, I'm
What are we
talking
talking
about
about?
pre-industrial levels.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what I'm referring to. So that thing where the climate is changing significantly, including significant
So
increase
can you
in
give me
global
some of my
temperature.
areas, like say like the
Wait, but I wasn't done with my
give me the
sentence.
hottest area.
Can
Give me the
you
hottest area.
hold on? I wasn't done with my sentence. So, um, the climate change I'm referring to can be well summarized by the rising sea levels and the increasing global mean temperature
Oh
of the
Jesus
last
Christ, this
150
fucking
years.
old story.
So, do you think that that's
Is
happening?
the polar caps melting again? Is that what's
Do-
happening?
Wait, so do you think that the thing I just said is happening?
I'm a big fan of those end of the world. What was that? What was that movie? The End of Tomorrow, whatever. The day after tomorrow.
It was a good movie. I
Do you
liked
have
it a lot.
nightmares about that one?
No, I actually liked the
Do
movie
you
a
have
lot.
nightmares about that movie?
No, I actually don't have nightmares really. But that's a cool dodge. So, do you think that like the thing
Yeah.
I described, because that's what I meant by climate change, do you think that that's happening?
Let me ask you: do you think scientists are funded and get paid, and that their answers can be altered by their funding?
If I answer your question, will you answer mine?
Yeah,
Okay. Yes, of course.
because I already
scientists-
answered one already.
Of course, scientists get funded. I don't think that
No, that wasn't my full question.
I wasn't done. I was answering. So yes, scientists get funding. Of course, it's a job.
Yep.
But I don't think that there is
Mhm.
any significant amount of data being changed as a result of this funding. Now, can you answer my question? Namely,
How many
I
boosters you
did
got,
answer.
buddy?
I did answer your question. Now, my question was, do you think that climate
I'm just
change,
curious.
as I've described it,
How many?
now,
Well, how many
sorry,
boosters you got?
to be clear, you did say you would answer my question after I
Have you
answered
prayed
yours.
to your Lord and Savior, Dr. Fauci?
To be clear, you did say that you would answer my question after I asked, or you would answer my question after I answered yours. So, will you? Can you be honest and actually answer the question?
I did say that, so go ahead. What was your
Yeah. So
what
the
was your
question is, do you think climate change, in the sense of increasing global mean temperature and increasing sea levels over the last 150 years, is happening?
No.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that answer. Very straightforward. Now,
Okay. Now, can
now
I
it's
ask
your
you
turn.
one?
You can ask
Like,
the
you didn't
question
really
now if you'd
fully
like.
answer. Perfect. So you think that scientists can't be bought and paid off, and that they have no repercussions when it comes to things that they claim are true or false when it comes to science, such as
Oh, is that a question?
was it the Pfizer or Moderna? How come? Here's another question.
Okay, so when I ask one
This
question,
is more
'cause you're kind of
specific,
rambling.
I guess. This
Yeah,
is
go
more
ahead.
Yeah. No, I know. I get one question. I'm trying to get more specific with you.
Mhm.
So, why does one of the leading healthcare companies, quotes, Pfizer, need a I might be saying this wrong, but a clause where they cannot be sued.
What are you asking? Why they need that? I don't know. Ask them. That's a policy decision. That's not a scientific decision.
Yeah, but you should be able to answer this one. Like why would
I mean,
scientists
I can speculate.
need
But I don't think that
why
was
don't
a
you,
decision.
just give me your best guess.
Look, so I suspect that probably what happened is that Pfizer was asked to start making a vaccine, and they said, look, it's not safe because we're making it so quickly. And so if you want us to do this this quickly, you're going to have to ensure that we're not going to get sued when we do what you ask us to do. But I suspect that wasn't scientists making that decision. That was probably like CEOs.
So your assumption is that was started that whole they can't get sued was during the time of 2019 2020, right?
Well, I don't know. That seems like the context that you're asking in, but this is not something I'm super familiar with because I don't follow policy decisions by CEOs very closely.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So
So you can, so I asked a question. Now it's your turn.
right. Do you think that evolution is real insofar as humans evolved from, perhaps what you might call lesser apes?
Nope. Can you?
Okay.
So I'll answer that. Can you provide like current examples of that happening now, or are we
Of
being? Are
evolution?
we still? Yeah. Are we still changing
Yeah, of course
as
we are.
humans? What are we?
Yeah. So,
So
for example,
we went from monk. So the consensus or the general thing is we came from what, monkey, right, to human, right? That's the
you might call it a great ape, but sure.
yeah from that species. So then what if we're going from what are we going into now next? What's the next one?
Well, this is not something that's predictable, but what we do know is that
But you got scientists
so
that I would assume that speculate, right?
maybe I'm not a I'm not a like an evolutionary biologist,
Okay.
so I'm not equipped to speculate. That
Okay.
said, there have been known sort of evolutionary things or evolutionary traits that have developed in humanity in the last 20,000 years. One of them being lactose tolerance, right? Most mammals, they can't digest, they don't have the enzymes to digest milk after, the toddler phase or whatever. But some humans can, and this is an This is a feature that evolved in humans because we did it a lot essentially, and so now you have a significant chunk of the world's population. I think like most of the Middle East and most of like North Africa and Europe are lactose tolerant, which didn't exist in humans prior to a few tens of thousands of years ago.
I mean, could that be also from I guess I may my that's probably that's way out of my guess, but some areas they wouldn't have access to like certain foods and stuff. I would imagine
Yeah.
maybe
So.
that's like and if they haven't tried it, it's the equivalent of so I have a kid,
Mhm.
I don't know, 7 month old, right? I wouldn't give him milk right away. He's on formula, right? But I wouldn't give it to him like at the age of 1 month old, because they are not
Pretty sure that they're supposed to get
their
like human breast
their
milk is
bodies.
pretty good for them, right? You mean like cow milk?
No,
Yeah.
breast milk. Yeah, breast milk. I'm talking about like hood
Okay.
milk. I'm talking about like the grocery store. So yeah, you don't want
Yeah,
to.
yeah.
Yeah, breast milk. You think, but that's formula. Like it's the equivalent of formula. So my point is, you want to be very cautious of what you give them, right? Because they haven't had it. They haven't really got introduced to it. So if you're in an area where certain products are not available, that region might be more lactose intolerant. So
No, that's actually exactly right. So because one of the best sources of nutrition in the ancient Middle East and in Europe was milk and cheese, there was an evolutionary pressure put on the people living in those areas to be able to tolerate digesting those foods in order to get nutrients, in order to get the nutrients that they need. So yeah, that's absolutely right, and that just wasn't as required in places like Asia and North America, or North and South America, and Sub-Saharan Africa.
I actually got a really good question for you. Like
Sure.
you're a whole big on the climate change thing, right? And how man can affect climate change, right?
Mhm.
Can the same be said about man with using chemtrails?
In principle, chemtrails were a thing, but they don't seem to be a thing. So
What do you mean they're not a thing? They are a thing. You don't see the
are you talking
zigzags.
about contrails?
Like, it may not be
Contrails.
like where you live. I don't know. I don't know where
Are
you
you ta-
live. So, but
Are you talking about contrails?
contrails. I may be
So,
saying it wrong.
so
The-
contrails is like the stuff left behind by planes, right? Like the lines in the sky.
yeah. What they're flying in the plane. Like you have
Yeah.
you have
So
people that you have like sworn testimonies from people that actually disperse the stuff, saying like I wouldn't be like anywhere near it.
so I don't know what
And
claims you're making about
they're
chemtrails.
openly like putting that shit in the air. So
I'm pretty sure chemtrails are not a thing.
like, do you know
Contrails,
what's
on
in
the other
them?
hand, are that's just water vapor that's left behind from an engine or a motor, or an engine of an airplane.
You're breaking up, man.
Can you hear me all right?
Or maybe
Can you hear me?
you're breaking up.
Testing.
Yeah, but you're frozen. No.
It looks fine on my end. Am I fine for everybody
All
else?
right, might be. I don't know if it was you or me. Might have been me.
Yeah. So contrails are the lines left behind by like
Okay,
passenger
yeah,
jets.
continue.
Yeah, so contrails are the lines left behind by like passenger jets and fighter aircraft and things like this. These are the
I'm
the
not
white
talking
lines
about
that you see.
passenger.
Right.
Well,
Chemtrails.
when you're talking about passenger,
Chemtrails, on the other hand, are a
Yep.
conspiracy theory that
Chemtrails.
doesn't
That's
there
the one
doesn't
I'm
seem to be any evidence for this. So, at least as far as the scientific
So they
community is
don't
concerned,
exist,
this
is
is
what you're
not
saying?
something that's a real thing.
really, because it's been like discussed in front of like actual committees about
And so
them
have
actually
aliens.
existing,
That
and
doesn't
you
mean
have
that
like
aliens are
sworn
real.
testimony. You have okay, that's a little silly, but okay, but fair point. But you have actual people that flew the jets and said that. So if by that notion, is it still made up if you have sworn testimony by the pilots,
We have sworn testimony from people in
or
Congress last year.
are the pilots full of shit too?
I suspect they're probably full of shit. We have sworn testimony from people. We have sworn testimony from people last year saying that they were in the room where the alien body was being dissected. But obviously,
So if I see
lying, right?
the zigzags, I just want to get your. I'm trying to get your consensus. If I see chemtrails or like lines in the sky, that's not affecting the planet. That's not causing climate change. But if
Those
I
are
throw,
contrails.
I'm sorry, if I drive my car, that is.
Well, so contrails actually do affect the climate. There was I saw something quite recently.
So it
Let me
can
pull it
affect
up
the
so I'm not
climate, but
wrong.
it can't affect people's health.
Well, no, so contrails and chemtrails are different things. Contrails are like a real thing. It's just water vapor in the sky, and those can absolutely affect the climate. They can, for example, like affect the amount of sun that's reflected by the by clouds. Because
It's not your health. It can't affect your health, right?
It's water vapor, and it's 20,000, 30,000
Okay.
feet up. No, it's not going to affect your health.
Gotcha.
Anything else you want from me, Angry, or can I ask you one more question and then we can call it there?
No, you go ahead. Go ahead and ask one more. I gotta go soon.
Okay. Do you think that, generally speaking, people who do science are interested in figuring out what's true about the world?
That's kind of very general. I think when they first started, yes. When they originally started, like when they were like kids, growing up, like for instance, when you grew up, I'm sure I don't know if you wanted to be a scientist or whatever, but you always had that dream. The initial goal, I think, started out purely. I think everyone can be corrupted to a certain point. I think.
Yeah. So I probably agree with that. That everyone can be. The question is do you think that the scientific community as a whole is?
Well, if you look at like you think back to the old commercials, the black and white TV commercials, when you had those scientists advertising the Marlboro smokes, and they're on TV like, hey, try this one. This is when I want to take relief. This is that cigarette I smoke.
Yeah.
Now,
So,
do you think it was purely for science, or do you think they were,
so
or do
I
you
know what
think
you're
maybe
asking.
were they not educated enough back then?
Look,
Or do you
so
think-
I agree that
because it could be a number of
individuals-
factors.
I agree that individuals can absolutely, lie for money. Absolutely a thing, of course. Any individual can. You give somebody enough money, most of the time, people
it's a
lie.
blanket. It's a
My
blanket.
question-
It's a
my
blanket
question
question.
is-
You can't say all cops are bad.
My question
all
is
scientists are
do you
evil.
think that the scientific community as a whole is like corrupted in a way that makes it worth distrusting or not trusting the consensus of the scientific community.
You gotta be a little bit more. You gotta be a little bit more specific, man. So for instance,
so
if I'm going to say
per-
overall, all the majority, there's a number of scientists around the world. So if I say like all the scientists, I think that the majority of scientists want to do good. But the system, for instance, like you got to get your PhD, you got to do, you got to go through like I'm assuming a board of trustees or some bullshit. I don't know. But like my point is like the system can be corrupted the same way police system could be corrupted, right? So you could be a good cop, you could be a bad cop, but like if you're in a system that's corrupted, then you're not going to do that much good to begin with.
That
if
was
you're
my
that
question.
one good
Do
cop,
you think the system is corrupted?
Yes, absolutely.
On what grounds?
Well, let's look at the jab. You look at the stats alone for the jab.
Okay.
They like for one, they did a patent 2 years before it even came out. So are they Nostradamus?
Are you asking about mRNA vaccines in general? Because mRNA vaccines are quite old.
No. I'm bringing up one specific thing. I don't want to guess. Well, the specific jab. I don't know if you can say. I don't think you can say.
I mean, look. Do you know the patent number? Because I could look at the patent now.
Why don't you just Google the patent number? I'm
on the phone now. So I don't know. Look, there are millions of patent numbers. You just have to tell me which thing should I look up to find the patent number.
I honestly can't pull it up right now because if I do, I think I. Oh wait, no, I can. I can move this.
Yeah, if you minimize the app, you can go find it. I won't kick you out or anything.
Yeah, I didn't know if I would lose you or not.
No, you're good. Yeah, you'll stay. Like I can't hear you now, but once you find the thing, come back, tell me what it is, and we can pull it up. In the meantime, while he's doing this, I think we have some super chats to go over. We have lots of super chats to go over. From Fear's interaction with the $10, my MAGA in-laws believe a large majority of scientists are part of a global conspiracy and are paid to promote lies. You guys must be super rich. Thanks for having this discussion. Yeah, if only, right? Like, look, we don't make a lot of money.
What is going on here? Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yeah, what's up? Did you find the thing? I don't know where he went. You have to reopen the app, otherwise I won't be able to hear you.
It's horrible right now. Oh, I'm sorry.
Is something happening?
Can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
I think. Okay. Yeah, I'm at like 2 bars. So sorry. Forgive me if it's.
You're
yeah,
fine.
but it's getting really bad.
Yeah, you're
and it's
fine.
freezing. I would definitely like to pick this up. I actually have to.
It's late June. Work. Where do you live?
No, my phone is freezing.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, well, we can pick this up at a later date. If you want to come back on, I'll do this once a week. So, yeah, good luck. Maybe next
definitely.
time.
I appreciate the conversation.
Of course. Thanks for being here. Now, we have a lot of super chats to go over, which I hugely appreciate, by the way. W for everybody who's contributing. Appreciate you guys a lot. From Tim Bimbadil with the $10. Reverend Deacon Dr. Blitz, can you get me a visa to be your research assistant? I don't know the first thing about physics. I just hate it here. MAGA is running wild. I live in the United States now. So no. Andy McAver, $2. The host sits down to pee. I mean, sometimes, especially when, you got to do number 2, it happens, right? But thanks for the $2. I appreciate you for supporting me. It's going towards my my lib bank account or something. From Fierce Interaction again, with the $10. Kind of want to hire that angry dude to be my trial lawyer. Would love to see him work his magic there. Honestly, maybe, yeah. Nathan Boyle with the $2. What is a woman? Alphabet community equals anti-science. So a woman is it's a type of gender, and at least that is the scientific consensus, that gender is a separate thing from sex. Now, depending on who you ask, they will have different answers as to what a woman is. You might define a woman as an adult female human. That is sometimes a useful definition. Sometimes a useful definition will be something like an adult human who subscribes to a certain set of social norms and societal cues that are typically associated with female sex. Language and definitions are generally contextual. So you just have to know which meaning is being used in which context, right? But thank you for the $2, Nathan. From Boom Fafoom with the 14 Canuck bucks. None of us, left, right, Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, none of us have a grasp on what's going on. We are just seeing a human experiment and government go wrong. Trump just exposed a flaw. Well, look, I mean, scientists tend to know what's going on about the real world. Like that's the whole goal. That's the whole thing that we study. That's like the whole skadoosh, right? From Ham, we have $5. Long Island shoving food down his gullet during a call-in season change equals climate change. Did you graduate 4th grade? Look, he came in hotter than he thought he needed, or he came in hotter because he thought he needed to come in hot. Turns out I'm actually quite chill, so he chilled out, and I appreciate that. And from Colin Stalker with the 5 British pounds, Dr. Blitz, your patience is legendary, smashing it as always. I appreciate you. And then also from Res Instance with the 100 Aussie dollars. I'll fund this scientist to skip this caller. I generally don't accept donations to skip callers, but I do appreciate you supporting me. It means a lot, and that's a huge W from Res Instance. Thank you so much. Anyway, let's move on to the next guest. All right, let's bring up Yellow Red. Yellow Red, how's it going?
It's going good. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Are you MAGA?
Yes, I am.
Okay. I have to ask one starting question. Do you think that humans caused climate change?
Quite honestly, I don't really know.
Okay.
I mean,
Why?
I guess it's possible, but I do believe that, and obviously I'm no scientist, but I think that the Earth is constantly changing and has been changing ever since it was created. Whoever created it, which I don't believe in God, so I don't believe that it was. I don't know how it got here, but regardless, I think it's just been constantly changing. Could there be a bit of persuasion from man? It's possible. The thing that bothers me, it doesn't bother me, but is that urgency. Like they're making it sound like the world is going to end tomorrow, and they have been for a long time, and we're still okay. I kind of am on the fence about it, if I believe in it or not.
Yeah,
I'm not
so-
ruling it out, but I'm not going to say, yeah.
So I'm curious as to where you learned that the world is constantly changing. The climate is constantly changing.
I didn't learn it anywhere. It just seems logical to me.
Okay. Would you say that like, have you heard of Pangea?
I have not.
Really? Okay, so, do you mind if I ask how old you are?
I'm 58.
Okay. So it might just, I mean, I'm pretty sure that Pangea was, like, we first started talking about that in the 50s, but it could be, anyway, that's neither here nor there. So Pangea was the name of a supercontinent. So back during the dinosaur era, 100 million years ago or so, all of the continents on Earth were squished together in one big giant continent, right?
Yes.
And the continents on Earth move. They move naturally. They're always moving. But they move like an inch a year, maybe 2 inches a year. And so the amount of change that we see in the continents is very, very small, just from natural causes, right? From tectonic plates moving around, all these sorts of things, right? But if all of a sudden, over the last 50 years, we saw that, like, I don't know, Australia was moving at like 10 miles an hour rather than an inch a year, you'd think that that was a different kind of change, right?
It's probable. Yes.
So when we're talking about climate change, it is true that the Earth's climate does change over time, over the course of thousands, tens of thousands, even millions of years. It does. It changes slowly. that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is the very sudden and very fast changing that's been happening for the last 200 years. And that is very unusual, right? I mean, if it were just changing slowly like it always has for the last however many billion years, that'd be one thing. But the temperature of the Earth has increased by like 2-ish degrees Celsius, 1.5, 2 degrees Celsius, in the last 200 years, which is like 100 times faster than it ever has before. So
okay.
at least that is what the scientific consensus says.
Yes.
So my question is why do you think that, you have the people who have studied this their whole lives? This is they all agree on this. Why doubt it?
I don't know. I just, it could be true. It could be because of man, or it could be just that it's deciding to move quicker. Like we don't really know why it does what it does. I mean, I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna say it isn't or it is. Like because I honestly don't know. In my opinion, I'm gonna lean more toward no, but I could be wrong.
But look, so the question of what is causing it, that's an interesting question that we should seek to answer. Surely we should be a little bit perplexed because we know that CO2 is a greenhouse gas and that that's something that you can just test in a laboratory. We know that humans are emitting a lot of CO2 now and have been for the last 200 years. And coincidentally, the Earth has also been getting warmer for the last 200 years. So that should at least set off some red flags, right, in your head. But then you can actually just do scientific investigations. You can test, you can do it's called a time series analysis, where you just analyze the data to figure out the cause of certain things. And one of the conclusions that we find is that prior to about 250 years ago, 250 years ago, the changes in the temperature of the Earth, they were not caused by CO2. There's no relationship between CO2 increasing and then temperature increasing. Starting about 250 years ago, increasing levels of CO2 have started to cause an increase in the temperature. And at least that is what the scientific consensus is. Now again, if you have reason to distrust what the scientific consensus is, that's one thing. But now I have to just ask, look, these people have studied this for, their whole lives. It's their job to do so. Who's more likely to be right?
The scientists.
Right. And so look, they could be wrong. But just if you were a betting person, it seems like you'd put the bet on the scientists rather than on I don't know, some random journalist on some blog.
Yes, that's reasonable.
And so what I'm curious about is why was your first instinct to distrust that?
I don't know. Maybe because of just honestly, I don't really distrust it more than I trust it. I really just I believe that climate is changing, and and maybe man is doing this. I'm not doubting it. I'm just not oh yeah, I know this for a fact. Like this is happening. You know what I mean? I don't really, there's really, yes, we're inclined to believe the scientists, and that's great. And I respect scientists. They know a heck of a lot more than I do, but I just think that there's no 100% guarantee that they're right, and they may be right, but I don't know that I don't know. It's kind of like a religion thing, where you can believe and go back and forth, and it's not like religion, but I mean, it this. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
You're fine.
I don't know. Can I just be on the fence about it and maybe move to a different topic?
You can, but I do just want to add one thing, and then we can move on to a different topic. That's fine. So, let's say that something like 98% of climate scientists agree on this, and not only do they agree that it's happening, but they agree on roughly what the future predictions will be. So, you know, that if we continue to release more CO2, the temperature will continue to go up. That's it happened in the past, it'll happen in the future. Pretty straightforward expectations. So let's say that the scientists will get it wrong maybe 2% of the time, and that every other time they'll get it right. So supposing that that's true, that the climate scientists who are making the prediction that in say 50 years the world will be 2 degrees warmer, and that it's caused by humans, do you think that that it's worth doing something about it? If they're right.
Yes, absolutely.
And
And really, I know that humans actually, now that I'm thinking about it, can kind of change it in a way. Maybe this is a smaller scale, but like California, like with all the swimming pools and all that kind of stuff, I know they made it into like more of a humid climate than what it was supposed to be.
Yep, that's the thing. But so if it's true that if we're causing it, then we should do something about it.
Yes.
And if it's also true that more often than not the scientists will be right about it, about the thing that they study, like their life's work, then doesn't it therefore make sense to even if there's a tiny chance that they're wrong, doesn't it make sense to bet with the scientists and actually make policy that reflects what they predict will happen?
Yes.
Okay. If you want to move to a different topic, we can. So, how do you feel about evolution?
I believe in evolution.
Okay. Including like human evolution?
I believe everything was evoluted. Like, excuse me. Yeah.
Great.
I don't
No,
believe
no.
anything. Yeah.
No, that's fine. And how do you feel about this is a tricky one. How do you feel about vaccines?
I think they're great because they, as far as medicine goes, we either, treat, cure, or prevent, and they can prevent,
Yeah,
bad things.
I agree. So look, apparently I have to be careful with the vaccine word. No, screw that. Screw TikTok censorship. I'm gonna say vaccine. Okay, so look, Yellow Red. I appreciate you for being humble and generally pro-science. I appreciate that. And that means, I guess, welcome to the left. I don't know why you voted for Trump, but you seem like a super reasonable person who likes to learn and likes science. So, I mean, maybe you voted for Trump for, tax
I
reasons
do,
or something.
and I do. I like to think of myself as a realist, a logical person, and but yeah, I voted for him because I like some of his policies, but I'm not your average. Everybody thinks Trump or MAGA people or whatever are all like lumped up into one, and I'm not. I support him, but I'm not, I'm not a puppet. Like I don't believe that he's my master or anything like that. I have a mind of my own. I just happen to like him.
Yeah. So, are you familiar with the big beautiful bill that's currently being fought over in the Senate and in the House?
Some of it, yeah.
It's the budget. It's the 2026 budget, right?
It is. I haven't read the whole thing, but yes.
Yeah, hardly anybody has. It's like 1,000 pages long, right? So
Right.
no shame for not having read it. So are you aware of the amount of funding cut that fundamental science is getting as a result of that bill?
Um,
Because
I've
it's a
I've
lot.
heard that
Like
there
it's a lot.
is it.
Yeah. So like
I'm
so NASA has so I'm a physicist, so I care about space and I care about physics, I care about that kind of thing. So that's the thing that I've read up on. But NASA is, as an organization, they get like 0.5% of the country's budget, roughly. Um, which is, it's like a lot of money if we think about it on like individual terms, but as far as the government is going, it's not that much. And their two divisions roughly are split between exploration and science, right? So you have like we want to send people to the moon, that's like exploration, and then we want to build a new telescope and put it up in space so that we can look at black holes or something. that would be like the science, like kind of the research science division. So NASA's budget is being cut in half as a result of the Big Beautiful Bill. And almost all of the cuts are being made to the science division. They're not really cutting the exploration division, but almost all of the science is going out the window. And I think that that's bad. And I think that should worry people who care about learning about how the world works.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't realize the extent of it, to be completely honest.
Yeah, it's like
I'm gonna
so
agree with everything that's in that bill. For normal, average people, we go off of campaigns and what they promise me or promise us. Sometimes they're liars, sometimes they're not. But I didn't know what he was going to propose in this bill before I voted for him. I'm sure there's some things in this bill that I agree with. I'm sure there's some things in this bill that I don't agree with. But I think it's like that probably with every.
Yeah, that's probably true. But look, the thing that worries me, and the reason why, the trouble is that there are a lot of reasonable people, and then the politicians that get elected by the reasonable people end up being very unreasonable, and that's my issue. Because every single, with the exception of two, Tillis and what's his name, Rand, is that it? No, not Rand. Paul, Tillis and Paul. These are the only two Republicans that voted against it in the Senate. Every other Republican voted for it. And this is a bill that increases funding to the military, which means we're building more fighter jets, and decreases funding to NASA, the National Science Foundation, the National Institute of Health, and a plethora of other smaller scientific agencies. And so why is it that the MAGA party, because the Republican Party is the MAGA party now, you can't say anything bad about Trump and stay elected, right?
Pretty much.
Why is it that the MAGA party is so inclined, so happy to cut scientific funding, but not to decrease our deficit? Because I understand we have a huge deficit and that's something that has to be dealt with. We're decreasing the scientific spending so that we can increase military spending more. Tell me that's not anti-science.
So what you mean? So why are they prioritizing military over science?
Yeah. It's not like the scientific spending is a huge part anyway. We're talking tens of millions of dollars, whereas a single jet costs $100 million.
It's a different mindset. I can actually see both ways, but a lot of MAGA people, they are really and the same with the far left. They can be really radical crazy too, but they have a certain mindset, and they've always been pro-military, and I don't know why, but they yeah. I personally like safety and prosperity, and a strong military does make me feel safer. Now,
Sure.
Should it be prioritized over science? I don't think so.
I mean,
I think they're both important.
do we really need more defense spending, though? We already spend more than the next few countries combined, right?
I guess we always want to be up at the top and have the best technology, equipment, that type of thing.
But don't we already have that?
We have it, but they always strive for more. It's just
Right.
I don't know.
But so my point is that scientific, if you had a group that generally liked science, that liked figuring out where we came from, and that was interested in the hard questions about being human, you'd think that they wouldn't strip the funding that goes towards answering those questions to build more bombs.
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of, I will say this, being MAGA, and it's not necessarily me, because again, but they're very they don't, a lot of them, and I'm just going to say it because it is true. There a lot of MAGA people, I don't know why, and again, I'm not in this category, but I'm just saying they're not as sensitive to others as the left is. In other words, the left is more humanitarian, like sensitive about like others' rights and things like that, which I do think is important. But they're more for like they have like a they're not as sensitive. They don't think with their emotions. They think
But
more with what they. Yeah, I know.
but this
I'm
isn't
just saying.
no, but this isn't even a isn't even a question of like, one group is more in like emotional contact with other people. Like this isn't even an issue of that. It's just like, look, generally speaking, I think that like scientific investigations have been super useful for humanity, like the entirety of humanity. And every time like a scientific breakthrough comes through, that's always been beneficial. So it seems short-sighted unless you have some ulterior motive for cutting scientific funding, which I think that there probably is. Unless you have some ulterior motive, there's just no justification for it. It's very cheap. The benefits that we get are very, very huge. One of the upsides is that you get a more educated population, which, if your goal is to keep people stupid, one way to do that is to stop funding the people who are doing the science. And I can't think of any other reason why you would fund this, or why you would cut funding this drastically.
Yeah, I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm not. Like again, I
And I
didn't know
appreciate
what
that,
was.
Yellow.
I didn't know. I didn't know what he was going to put in this bill. I really didn't. I knew basic, long, but I didn't. I didn't know that. And I don't think. Yeah, I don't think they should cut science that much. Like they are.
And nobody's asking you to, read over every single bill, because bills are like 1,000 pages long. But like, I just hope that this information is at least useful for you, and makes you think about
Yeah.
things a little bit. But Yellow, I'm gonna let you go. But thank you for being so good faith. I appreciate you being here.
All right. Thank you much. Have a good
Have a good
day.
one. Y'all need to be nice. We have 2 super chats. One from IR Zev, with the $5. Long Island hater could get lobotomized and his intellect would remain unaltered. Hey now. Look, I'm not gonna say anything. And then from your local Commanders fan with the $2, Jesus is the one and only true God. Look, if that's what you believe, that's what you believe. All right, let's talk to somebody named Science First on YouTube. Science First, can you hear me?
I can. How are you?
I'm doing all right. Would you say that you're MAGA?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you think that climate change is real?
I'm sorry, ask that again.
Do you think that climate change is real?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think it's human caused?
I think there's differing opinions on it.
Yep. Okay.
And I think it could go either way. But I would have a question for you. Do you think that all of MAGA believes that man-made climate change isn't real, or just most of it?
I think that clearly there are going to be people who are like, very well informed on climate change, and they know that humans cause it.
Elon Musk is MAGA, right? Do you think
Who knows? Who knows what he is these days? Since the divorce, who knows where he is? But I mean, yeah, I think that like of course there's going to be people in every group who hold every position, but overwhelmingly, MAGA is generally a anti-climatologist.
Because the problem here is that a lot of MAGA is Christian, and I think what you're going to find is there's overlap, because there's atheists that support MAGA, and then there's Christians that support MAGA, there's Muslims that support MAGA, and so on and so forth. So I think you're kind of creating a blanket statement, which would kind of be anti-science, wouldn't it?
No, actually, because I have because I have scientific data that accounts for this. For example, even accounting.
Well, but is there sciences that you deny?
Science first.
Is there
Science first, please.
that you deny?
I was in the middle of a sentence. So, for example, even after you control for religion, political conservatives are far more likely to say that evolution is fake than liberals are, even controlling for religion. So this has nothing.
I disagree with you even there.
I have scientific data I have scientific data that disagrees with you. So like now you're being anti-science.
I think if you went to a paleoconservative, which, do you know what a paleoconservative is?
Yeah, it's another word for a libertarian who I don't know.
No,
you guys have so many words.
No, this isn't old. This is or new. This is actually very old. There's a phrase called a neoconservative, which is a new age conservative, like your Liz Cheney's and your Dick
Sure.
Cheney's, who believe in climate change, man-made climate change, and push it. And then you have your neoconservative or your paleoconservatives, which are the conservatives, I would say, of the Republican Party. We believe in God, and we want God to return to greatness in this country. But no science that you have said so far, and I've been watching you now for like an hour and a half, nothing you've said so far contradicts God in any way. And everything you've said is
get
kind of
your
a blanket statement. So
Yeah,
there's
okay.
sciences you deny. There's sciences
Like what?
you deny, right?
I don't think so.
Well, I mean, if you
But hold on,
created a
before we
contradiction.
pivot,
You've already created
before
a
we pivot,
contradiction in this conversation, though, because
before
at
we
one
pivot,
point in time, go ahead.
before we pivot, I just want to tell you about a paper that did exactly this thing. So they took a single religious
Exactly
group.
what
So these are American Mormons. So we're controlling for religion by studying just American Mormons.
Mormons aren't Christians, though.
I didn't say that they were. I'm saying controlling for religion. So once you control for a religion, you can study liberal Mormons, conservative Mormons. And what you'll find is that even amongst a single religious group, you find that, and this was a study that was conducted, what year was this? 2018? Even amongst a single religious group, you find that liberals have a more positive association with evolution claims and are more likely to believe that evolution occurred than conservatives are, even when they share the same religion.
Yeah, but if you go back to your John Locke liberal, you know who John Locke is?
I'm not talking about notions of classical liberal and like classical conservatism
but
from
I'm
like the
saying
French
if you
Revolution.
go back to certain
I don't.
liberals, well, you're saying liberals support
I'm
this,
speaking
and
about
I'm saying
liberal
that if
in the
you go-
traditional, or I'm speaking about liberal in the United States sense of left leaning. That's what I mean.
I wouldn't say most liberals lean left anymore. I would say they lean
Okay,
right.
that's a cool definition conversation if you want to have it. The point of the matter is people who are more likely to vote Democrat, which we are in the U.S. are generally called liberals, are more likely, even controlling for religion, to believe that evolution is real.
Well, I mean, isn't evolution a theory?
There you go, doing it right there. This is what we call anti-science. What you're doing right now.
It's not anti-science.
It is.
What you're doing is you're taking a theory and you're forcing me to say that it's fact. And
I'm asking you, do you think that humans evolved?
Do I think human beings evolved?
Evolved from
what?
a non-human species.
From a non-human species? No.
Okay. And do you agree that yeah, of course. Do you agree that
what species do you think we evolved
Homo habilis?
It's like a fish?
No. Do you
have
think
you ever seen a fish turn into a man?
No, but that's not the evolution. That's not the claim of evolution people.
So have you ever
Evolutionary
seen
biologists.
a monkey turn into a man?
Science first. You say science first. You do acknowledge that like 99% of evolution of not even evolutionary biologists, 99% of biologists agree that evolution happened, right?
Yet it's still a theory, though, right?
To humans.
It's still a theory, though, right? Last I checked, evolution's still a theory.
Okay, to be clear,
is all of Darwinism still valid, or do we?
So to be clear, I'm talking about the process of evolution. I'm not talking about whatever theory. I'm talking about the process of evolution. Not like some enormous fraction. I can go find a poll if you want, but like I've never met a biologist who disagrees that evolution happened to humans. If you want to bring up an example, okay, you have. Do you want to go name for name?
Because you could often say that natural selection is evolution.
Natural selection is a means by which evolution happens.
They
are not the same thing, though.
It can also be confused. It's not. It's a means in which it can happen, but it's not always evolution. So, like, if a squirrel suddenly becomes black, right, which this does happen in nature, that's not evolution, right?
It is. Yeah.
How's it evolution?
So evolution is the change in allele frequency in a population over time.
So what do you think? What is evolution then?
I literally just defined it for you. It's change in allele frequency in a population over time.
Change in a what?
In allele frequency. Do you know what an allele is?
Allele.
A-L-L-E-L-E.
A-L-L. Say it again.
I think I spelled it right.
A-L-L-E.
Allele.
A allele definition.
Did you
One
take high
or
school biology?
two or more affirmative forms of a gene that arise by mutation and are found at same place. Well, see, this is something I think evolution.
To be clear,
when
science
you
first.
apply evolution,
Did you take high school biology?
I did.
Because you should have. Do you know what a Punnett square is?
You said it weird, so it kind of confused me for a minute. So
Do you know what a Punnett square
when
is?
you apply, hold on. When you apply evolution to like a fingernail, sure, evolution kind of makes sense, but where evolution starts to fall apart for me is when you apply it to a fingernail, a toenail, the hair on my head, my eyeballs. Like, how did all of this stuff evolve into this stuff, and then how does it all work together? Like, how does a dead skin cell in my foot decide to become a hair follicle on top of my head, just out of natural, things? And an allele, I guess I have heard of this. It's one or two more alternative forms of a gene changing. And when you apply allele to like a fingernail, how like a skin follicle becomes a fingernail, that makes sense. But when you try to apply how a dead cell becomes a fingernail or hair or skin, or almost anything else usable by the body, it sort of starts to fall apart. And that's where Darwin's theories have begun to fall apart too, is once you start to apply these things to multiple body parts at one time, the whole idea of evolution falls apart.
Science first. Are you a biologist by chance?
Do you agree with that though? Do you agree with that?
No, I don't. Not at all.
Apply it to multiple body parts. Oh, okay.
But science first.
Do you agree
are you a biologist?
Do you agree that Darwin's theories are used less and less today?
I mean, the core idea is used the same amount, if not more. But we have more information about DNA, for example.
That's a lie.
Are you so science first? Are you a biologist?
No.
Oh, okay.
I'm a man of many sciences, so I don't claim any one science. I'm
a man of many sciences. What sciences?
Correct. Just name it. I used to call myself a physicist, but I don't know, because you don't seem to know a lot about different sciences. And I used to think physicists are supposed to know a little bit about everything, and you don't really seem to know. You know, like a little bit about a little bit. Your gotchas seem to be the same thing. Like ask, is climate change real?
Right.
Is climate change real? Let's ask that again.
Science. This is a cool pivot. But I'm not letting you get off of the evolution thing.
Are there more trees or forests
science first. I'm not letting you pivot on this. I'm not going to let you run away from the evolution conversation.
But we're going to go back to the forest expansion.
We can come back to it when we're done with evolution. Okay. Sure. So look, you're not a biologist.
The theory of evolution.
Do you believe that you're adequately equipped to examine the data brought forth by biologists in favor or perhaps against the notion that humans evolved from a non-human ancestor?
Ask that again.
Do you believe that you're equipped to examine the relevant data here?
I have. I am, and I have.
Okay, when was the last time you read a paper, like a biology paper?
On like evolution?
Yeah.
Probably like 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay. What was it about? Do you remember?
It was about gender evolution and stuff like that. Like, I was trying to understand how you people seem to think that one day a man can be a man and the next is a woman, and that's not a contradiction in science.
Okay, that doesn't seem like evolutionary biology.
Because, well, you seem to think that human beings have evolved into beings that can just change their genders.
Yeah, so right? This is a cool pivot, but again, it doesn't seem like this has to do with evolutionary biology.
You asked me what I was reading, and I'm telling you what I was reading, right?
Right. So I was asking what
this was about.
What
this was about
biology paper.
Well, it was.
Was this psychology?
I don't remember the title of it.
Was this psychology or was this biology? Okay.
It would have been.
So I asked you about a biology paper.
It would have been both.
I asked. Okay. So when was the last? So have you ever examined the scientific literature on, say, the relationship between Homo habilis and Homo sapiens?
Can you just put that in terms that like somebody who eats crayons every day could understand?
Sure, I'll put it in. I'll put it in the terms that
between monkeys and man.
I'll put it in. I'll put it in terms that a Marine can understand. So Homo sapiens are humans like us. Homo habilis are non-human hominids. So they are they are not us. They're not modern humans. They're a different kind of human called Homo habilis.
So like a fish.
It's a different species.
Nope. Be a fish.
You seem like you're having trouble. It's a different species.
Well, what
of
is
human.
it? Describe.
It's a human. It's in the genus Homo, which is it's habilis. Okay, fine. It's in the species of Homo, or it's in the genus of Homo, and it's a different species of, you might call it like a humanoid or a hominid or something like that.
So like a monkey?
Can you see my screen right now?
No, but there is a slight delay.
So let me share. Well, okay, maybe you should, if you're on a computer or if you're on a
let
phone.
me Google it. What was it?
Yeah, Homo habilis. So it's HOMO space,
Habilis. Yep.
and then HABI.
Oh yeah, sure. The
LIS.
Neanderthal.
Nope, Homo
The
habilis is
Neanderthal?
not a Neanderthal. No, they're different things. Look up Homo habilis. And for everybody who doesn't,
It looks like a Neanderthal. It looks like a Neanderthal.
how?
Yeah. East is South Africa, 2.4 million, 1.65 million years ago. That's I don't necessarily know if the Earth is that old, but we'll say sure.
Oh,
for whatever
hold on.
reasons.
Wait, hold
One
on.
species
Wait, we're
description,
doing more
1964.
science denial.
Well, I accept that carbon dating is real.
Mhm.
And carbon dating itself only goes back about 60,000 years, right?
Fortunately, we don't use carbon dating to figure out the age of the Earth.
But we did at one point, right?
No, never did.
Well, we can't really predict. We can predict the age of the Earth, but it is only a prediction, right? So my prediction is just as valid as your prediction.
No, my prediction is backed up by the entire scientific community.
I'm part of the scientific community, so you are lying.
When was the last time you published a paper?
Are you saying that the sum of the scientific community doesn't believe in God and creationism and would back up that, there is a creation of the Earth and things like that?
So I think, at least in the United States.
You seem to think
I can just mic log you. You don't have to raise your voice with me.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to. So you seem to believe in two different sciences. You believe in what I like to call gay science, and then you like to battle it with straight science.
I have no idea what you're talking about, but it seems like you have some deeply seated homophobia in there. Maybe it's time to come out of the closet. Regardless, the point is that I can think of exactly one physicist, or perhaps. Yeah, we'll say physicist or geophysicist in the United States.
You say this is evolution
Please.
and not natural selection?
I wasn't done.
Okay, go ahead.
I can think of exactly one in the United States, and I know them by name, that has a PhD in the field and thinks the Earth is 6,000 years old. Exactly one. Amongst the tens of thousands who disagree.
6,000. The people who believe in the Bible don't necessarily think the Earth is 6,000 years old.
When I say 6,000 years old, I'm using that as shorthand for less than 1,000,000 years old, say. I think that he thinks it's like 6,800, whatever.
The Earth could be 1,000,000 years old. I leave that open.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but
So,
I think that with carbon dating, the atmosphere only existed to about 60,000 years ago.
We don't use carbon dating to establish the age of the Earth. I don't know if you knew that.
Anyways, keep going.
Yeah, so it seems like you're not willing to accept that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old. Is that the case?
Are you saying that as a fact?
I'm saying that is as close to a fact as the sun will rise tomorrow.
You seem to take a lot of theories as fact and apply them as fact. So
yeah.
like,
So
when you think
this is a cool pivot. But to be clear,
a woman is a man.
This is a cool pivot. But did you answer the question or not?
What's that?
Do you think that the Earth is 4.5 billion years old?
No.
Okay.
I think it's 4.5.1 years old.
Yeah,
so
I think
it's 4.51 billion years old. So
this is a cool rhetoric attempt, but it's not landing at all. Yeah, so your cool rhetoric isn't landing. The point is I was clearly rounding. But this is so just to be clear, we can go there in just a sec. Just to be clear, this is a great example of MAGA, who claims to be science first, just completely disregarding the entirety of the geochronology scientific community. And the entire community of biologists.
I can disregard a theory all I want, bud.
This is what's called science denial, by the way. Just saying, like this is anti-science.
Denying theories is science denial.
Do you deny atomic theory? Do you deny atomic theory?
Is it still a theory?
It's called atomic theory. Yeah.
Is it it's a theory then, right?
Yep. Do you think that atoms exist?
I'm not wrong to not accept it as law, right?
Wait, do you think that theories become laws? Is that how you think the scientific process works?
I think theories still haven't been proven, right?
No, they absolutely have. As much as you can prove anything in science, they absolutely have. What do you think a theory is, my guy?
Let's look it up, shall we? Let's see a theory definition. Because I don't
Yeah,
want to
sure.
be accused of anything. So a suspicion or a system of ideas intended to explain something, especially one based on general principles independent of the thing to be explained. But
Yeah.
is a theory a fact?
Well, so
No, a theory is not a fact. Theories
No,
are
but
explanations of observed phenomena.
theories are explanations, right? Yeah, you got that part right.
You're right. So my theory.
They are explanations,
so
and they
is
can be backed up by
creationism a
facts.
theory? Is creationism a theory?
Creationism is a hypothesis.
Is it a theory?
No,
No. Oh.
no. At least not in the way that scientists use the word.
Oh. Is this the consensus of science again, saying that creationism isn't a theory?
Yes.
Because I think even outside the Bible, creationism is a theory, right? I mean, setting God aside,
do you think that you're
been created, right?
So you're currently making a semantic argument. The point is we have overwhelming.
No. I'm making.
Hey, science first. Science first. I appreciate. I apologize for interrupting the beginning of your sentence with the middle of mine.
Well,
now,
you keep lying.
I'm sure I do. So look, we have overwhelming scientific evidence. We have overwhelming scientific evidence that humans evolved from non-human ancestors, that the Earth is roughly 4.5 billion years old, that climate change is a real human-caused thing, that vaccines tend to be effective.
These are good theories, though. Why are these still theories, bud? Why are they still theories?
You're playing a semantic game, and it doesn't do anything.
No,
for
I'm
you.
not.
It makes you look bad.
I'm not
You
taking
are.
a theory as a fact. You're taking.
I didn't say the word theory
the dumbest
once.
approach. Huh?
So look, I didn't say the word theory once. You're the one who
just
thinks that
because you
if the
didn't
word
say-
theory is in the
just
name.
because you didn't say
Hey,
the
so
theory
science
of
first.
evolution
Again,
doesn't mean
I was in the
evolution's
middle of
not
a sentence.
theory.
The point
Yeah, but you were saying-
is that we have
you were saying
overwhelming amounts of
stupid.
scientific support for these things. Now, if you're mad that something has theory in the name, take that up with the dictionary. But the point
you're
is
mad
that we have
it has
overwhelming
theory in the name.
science first.
You're
It's
mad
almost
it has
like
theory in
it's
the name.
almost like you're incapable of having a conversation without interrupting someone. I would have thought that somebody as educated as you would
it's
know
almost
proper
like you're
etiquette for
incapable
conversations.
Of understanding what a theory is.
Look, so the point
almost
is
like you're
whether
incapable of
if you want to call it a theory or not, that's totally fine. The point
It's
is
not
that
me
these have
calling it,
overwhelming.
It's the science community.
Sorry, I have to
calling it
mute you so then I can actually talk. If you want to call it a theory, that's fine. The point is that we have overwhelming scientific evidence that these theories are well supported by the data. Overwhelming scientific evidence. Now, if you want to say, oh, well, it's still just a theory, you can do that. And then you can also just go stop relying on the power that's generated from the nuclear power plants, because that's reliant on the nuclear or the nuclear theory of the atom. Or you can stop taking your antibiotic, because that's reliant on the germ theory of disease. Look, this is what I mean by MAGA is anti-science. You're unmuted.
So you accept theories as facts?
Theories are explanations for observations in the world. I accept some explanations are well supported by the data. Yes.
Right, but what is it? So
You sound like a flat earther, by the way.
So a theory is a fact. No, you actually sound like a flat earther, because
that was a cool nuh-uh, but you're the one.
Flat Earth is a theory.
So science first.
Accepted as fact, right?
No, it's not a theory. It's not even an explanation.
I mean, it's been disproven. But
so science first.
Left the Earth, it was a theory.
No, it wasn't.
Flat Earth. We didn't once believe as human beings that the Earth was flat.
In a pre-scientific way, sure, but that doesn't make it a theory. So science first. Science first. I'm gonna have to mute you again. Look. The point is that when I say you sound like a flat earther, I'm speaking from experience because I've spoken with a lot of flat earthers, and they all make the exact same argument you do. Ah, well, that's just a theory. That's just a theory. That's not a fact. Literally, that's one of their favorite things to say about gravity. They think that because we call Einstein's theory of general relativity, because that's our best understanding of gravity, because it has the name theory in the name, they think that that means that it's not real. You sound like a flat earther, my guy. You're unmuted.
Well, why do we say relativity is still a theory?
That's just the name of the thing. Einstein wrote that in the title. No, it literally is the name of the thing.
Relativity is not fact. We use relativity.
Okay.
Do you know the history
Okay.
of GPS? Do you know the history of GPS?
It was originally used for the military. I don't know much more, more of the history of GPS
So
than
when
that.
GPS was first released into the general public, people didn't believe relativity over over Newton's equation for gravity. People didn't believe that time
That's not true
was
historically.
different.
I mean,
Well,
that's not true
GPS was-
historically.
Oh my gosh.
Like GPS came out in what, like the 60s or the 70s or something like
Well,
that by the
relativity
military?
proved Mars, right? Relativity is what solved the Mars problem. And,
Nope, you don't even know the history, right?
If you'd let me finish, can you let me finish for 1 second? I mean, I know
Oh,
you
are
like
you
to
mad?
interrupt
Are you
people.
mad that I'm interrupting you?
No, I'm not. I'm not. It's just that anytime real science starts to come out, you interrupt.
Go ahead.
So you're saying that they didn't use the original equation. I can't think of it offhand. I do apologize. Did not equate for Mars, Mercury. I'm sorry, not Mars. Mercury.
There we go.
Yeah. So it solved for the Mercury equation, and that's what brought up the whole time in space and stuff like that. When GPS first released in the early 2000s, maybe late 90s to the general public, they didn't believe that Einstein's relativity was important, and they went off of the Newton's equation. I can't remember what the equation is. You'll have to bear with me. And within just a few hours of GPS being active, people were driving into lakes and things like that because they didn't understand time and things like that. But relativity is still a theory because it's not law yet, because it's still off by just a little bit. We still have to resync clocks and things along that line in satellite dishes and stuff like that. Satellite dishes and in what am I trying? Not just satellite dishes, but the things that fly around in outer space.
So you basically got all of the history wrong. So the whole notion of time dilation, that came out 10 years before relativity, before the general theory of relativity did. That was by Einstein in 1905, the general theory of relativity, which accounted for the precession of the precession of Mars, or sorry, the
I'm not wrong,
the precession
by the way,
of Mars.
Folks. I'm
You
not
are
wrong.
I mean you are. Please, I was in the middle of the sentence.
Here just wants to
I was in the middle. Okay, I'll just mute you so that I can correct you, because I let you ramble for a while. I expected you to let me respond, but apparently you're not capable of that. So Einstein's general theory of relativity came out in 1915. Einstein's special theory of relativity came out in 1905. 1905, the paper included time dilation. This is the business where if you go faster, time slows down for you. The general theory of relativity is what accounted for the difference in Mercury's orbit that was observed. That was 10 years later. So no, the whole time slowing down stuff did not originate with general relativity and gravity and the Mercury stuff. Second, GPS, the GPS project, was launched in 1973, and it had inbuilt in the satellites, it had the corrections from both general and special relativity built in from the get-go, because everybody knew, the military who was using it at the time, everybody knew that it was true, that relativity, both special and general, are true. Now, if you would like to respond to how...
Thank you. Yes, you just agreed.
No, you were off by...
I was just slightly off. I was just slightly off, that's all. Just like relativity, that's why it's not a law. It, too, is just slightly off.
So
relativity's not slightly off. I want to hear you say that. Relativity's
not
slightly off.
So science first. There has never been an experiment from which
Hold on, did you just say it is slightly off? Because you kind of
no, I didn't.
Those, yeah. So it's relatively slightly off.
I'm answering your question. Don't interrupt me, or I'm going to mute you again.
Yeah, it's just a yes or no. It's just a yes or no.
There has never been an experiment that disagrees with the predictions of general relativity, or an observation for that matter.
That's why it's a theory. Yeah.
No, it's a theory because Einstein put the word theory in the title of the paper. That's why. It has nothing to do with the evidence for it, that it's inaccurate. It has nothing to do with that.
Where did you go to school? Can I ask where you got your degree?
No, you can't. But I can tell you it was from a top 30 university.
I don't think you.
I'm sure. It was from a top 30 university. I know you don't.
Well, it would have been better from Trump University because
is that where you went to school?
Theories are fact.
Is that where you went to school, science first?
No, I went to a community college.
That checks out.
My degree is from a community college.
So you have an associate. You don't even have a bachelor's in science.
No, I don't.
So you have an associate's in general science?
Yeah. Just like Einstein said, you wouldn't call a fish stupid because it can't climb a tree, right? I guess that's something.
That's a fair point. I shouldn't call you stupid because you're incapable of having these sophisticated thoughts. That's a good point.
Well, no, because he knew imagination was more important than intelligence. And that's because folks like you will go out and you'll say, I'm the authority because I have a PhD, and you shouldn't do anything
you know what's interesting?
because I have a PhD. And
You know what's
theories
interesting?
are facts
I
and
didn't.
blah, blah, blah. Because he warned about fake scientists
This
like you coming
this is
out
such a
and,
rhetorical win
and
for me.
creating
You look so
fallacies.
stupid.
Well, you
So science
constantly
first.
create a fallacy.
So science first. You know, I didn't actually bring up my degree once in an entire conversation.
Bro, I'm not just in our conversation, no, but in previous conversations you have, right? Didn't the last person you spoke with, you said you have a PhD?
I don't think
You're
so.
a
The woman?
physicist. You're a physicist, right? You have a PhD.
I am a physicist. Yeah, the first person I
Yeah.
spoke to asked
Yeah, you have a
what my
PhD,
degree
right?
is in. Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Okay.
But
You
I
said
didn't
it,
like
right?
I wasn't making an appeal to authority.
you
Because
were.
I didn't even bring up my credentials whatsoever.
Well, you asked where I went to school from, right?
Yep, that's what I asked.
Yeah, so that's an
Not
appeal
a-
to authority. Yeah, it is.
No, it's not.
It
No,
is,
it's not.
though. It is. It is. It is. Because once I said community college, you said, "Oh, that explains things."
Well, yeah, then I was just
That
making fun of you.
explains it. Yeah, and then I corrected.
That's not an
you
appeal
by
to an
saying
authority.
a
That's just
nice
me making
fancy
fun of you.
Einstein quote. Well, that sounds like what I would expect from the science, from Dr. Science. So
You know
what
how to
other
read, right?
sciences- What
Well,
other,
so
let's go to the forestation.
so this is
thing.
so this
I
is
wanna talk about
fascinating.
climate change. I want to
So
talk
so
about
I,
climate
be,
change
be,
now.
before we
So-
get there,
so are
and
the
I just want to
forests
summarize what's
expanding?
happened. I just want to summarize what's
This is the
happened. So
third time. This is the third time I've tried to bring it up, and you.
I
keep
know,
cutting
I know.
it. Are the forests
Give me one
expanding?
sentence, and then we'll move
Real
on to
quick,
whatever you're
though,
doing.
Are the forests expanding?
Are the forests expanding? Plausibly, we
Yeah.
can look it up. But anyway, science first. So
Possibly?
just to be
Oh,
clear,
okay.
what
Well,
we've
you're the
done,
climate
what we've
expert.
done
You don't
here
know if
is
the
we,
forests are expanding?
what we've done here is we have established that you don't think that that humans evolved from non-human animals. You
'Cause it's
don't
a
think that the
theory.
Earth is
'Cause
4.5
it's a
billion years
theory.
old.
'Cause
You
it's a
don't
theory.
think
That's
you
a
don't
theory
think
too.
that
That's a theory
Einstein's
too.
you don't think that Einstein's relativity is like a true feature of reality. And what was
That's
the other
not
one
true.
that you
That's
don't?
not
Oh,
true. That's,
oh,
You
okay.
didn't even listen to what I said. I said relativity
Oh, okay.
is still a theory. It's
Oh, okay.
still
So
a
do you
theory.
think it's
It's
true?
off just a little bit.
Do you
Is
think
it
it's
not
oh
just
oh
off just a little
okay?
bit?
Then correction. Right. You think that Einstein's relativity is off. So and you're not anti-science though. Surely you're not anti-science, despite thinking that human evolution didn't occur, despite thinking that the Earth isn't 4.5 billion years old, despite thinking that Einstein's relativity is off. You're not anti-science though, right?
I have no idea what you just even gobbledygook rambled about.
Reading comprehension is hard. Anyway, you want to talk about forestation?
No,
We can
it's
talk about
not.
forestation.
It's not. Accepting theories as facts is hard.
Okay, I'm sure.
Only in-
So do you want to
only
talk
in
about
an
forestation? That's fine.
intelligent
We can do that.
Yeah, are the forests expanding?
I don't know that off the top of my head. I can look it up for you though.
You have studied climate change for how long, and you don't know if the forests are expanding?
So I'm looking up forest coverage over time. Let's look on the globe.
No, just Google, are
world.
the forests expanding?
So global tree coverage. It seems like there's a slight upward trend. Yeah.
Yeah. So climate change could actually be a good thing.
Oh wait, no, I'm sorry. Hold on. This I feel so stupid. This plot is global
From
tree cover
2000 to
loss.
2020.
This is global tree cover loss, and the loss has been going up. So it seems like tree cover has been decreasing.
No.
I can show you. Well, no, you can't see the plot. I'll show everybody who's watching though.
While deforestation remains a concern in some regions, global forest cover is actually increasing. This expansion is driven by both natural regeneration and active reforestation efforts, particularly in the countries like China and Australia, according to Wood Central. So, I mean, isn't it amazing?
Everybody
Like,
can see the chart, by the way.
I think your search, I think whatever you use for search is like woke science. Like it just, whatever, it's amazing.
That's hilarious, by the way.
Well, it amazes me that I Google forests are expanding and I get yes, forests are
Why don't?
expanding.
So why did you Google something biased?
Forest, and you Google
No, I just Googled
forests are
forest
expanding,
coverage.
and you get that forests are decreasing.
No,
Isn't
I
that
actually
amazing?
just Googled forest coverage. I didn't include expanding or decreasing in my search terms. I just Googled coverage. And it seems like the coverage is decreasing.
Don't you think that the result? Well, how are they expanding if
But they're not. I
decreasing?
think that I haven't seen any data that suggests that. Now they might be expanding in certain areas, like some
Well, this is
places
just
may
something
be
you searched
planting
5
trees.
seconds ago, isn't it?
Yeah, and apparently you were wrong
Yeah,
about
so
it.
you see no evidence in the last 5 seconds that.
Yep.
Jeez, dude, you are the dumbest.
All of the
person
sources,
I
all
think
of the
on
sources seem to
Google.
agree with that.
I think you're about the dumbest person I've ever debated.
You,
Like,
this
I
must be your first
honestly-
debate then.
Bruh. Literally, just Google forests are expanding. How about forests are expanding? Can you Google that?
Okay, I will do that for you. Forests
Okay.
are expanding. Okay,
There we
let's see what this says.
Okay. Bring it up on the screen, please. Bring it up on the screen.
Can you see my screen?
I can see the YouTube feed. It
So
just
it'll be a
has
bit
delay.
delayed.
Yeah, but only by like 10 seconds. Mhm.
Yeah. Hold on, let me just make it so then it fits the screen. Here we go. Okay. So I googled forests are expanding, and here's what I get. So we have an AI overview. Globally, forest coverage has decreased. Sorry, that's the wrong one. I was reading forest coverage over. Oh, that's actually really weird.
You
One
still
sec. Let me.
have your screen up on YouTube.
Yeah, it's gonna take some time. So first I googled
It
first.
should only take like 10 seconds. Like it's
Yeah,
only
I know.
Like
There's a
10-second
delay. I'll just share my screen with you on this app. Window.
Well, I want it on
this one.
YouTube because you're sort of like dodging
YouTube,
the Google search
YouTube
right
can see
now.
it. YouTube can see it. It'll
I'm
just take some
watching
time for you.
YouTube. I still can't see it.
It's literally live on YouTube. Chill.
Okay.
So if I search forests are expanding, the AI overview says, while deforestation is still a concern in some parts of the world, forests are actually expanding in many regions due to reforestation efforts, natural regeneration, and the effects of climate change on tree growth. On the other hand, if I Google...
So hold on. So go back to that. Go back to that.
Muting you. I'm going to read this. I'm going to read the other thing because I wasn't done. On the other hand, if I Google forest coverage over time, world, the AI overview says globally, forest coverage has decreased over time, but the rate of loss has slowed down in recent decades. So it seems like the AI overview maybe is just not reliable.
This says because of climate change. So maybe
Yeah,
climate
so-
change is influence. Wouldn't you say the stuff that trees breathe, more of it could be a good thing?
Maybe for the trees, but not necessarily for us. So it
And
seems
for
like
the plants
it's
that we
actually
eat,
not
for
true.
the animals that eat those plants.
So we shouldn't trust. Do we agree that we
It is
should?
actually
Do
true,
we
though.
agree that
So
we
you're
should
just
trust
biased,
the
that's
AI
all.
overview, or
You're
should we
what I
not
like
trust
to
the
call
AI
stupid
overview?
Science. Do what?
And I appreciate
Well,
that.
I mean, Google, click on its source. Click on the source. According to
Yeah.
Blitz Central, click on a study by science.
So this is the first source.
Hold on. Forests are expanding. Stop going so fast.
This is the
'cause
first. Oh, I'm sorry. Is this too fast
study
for
of
you?
the science by
This is the
found-
first
hold on.
source. The first source is
Forests are-
36
hold on,
countries.
Hold on, go back real quick. This is amazing because your Google AI is giving something different than what mine is, and we both search for the exact same thing.
I'm
Forests
just
are
clicking on the
expanding.
first source like you told me to. I typed in forests are
here's the
expanding.
thing,
I clicked on
because
the
yours
first
is giving
source.
you something different. No, see that's no in the
And yours
AI
probably comes from
Okay.
InfoWars, right?
Listen. See
Look.
that link right there? No, go back.
This is the
The
first.
link
I
that's-
clicked
Yeah,
the
see, a
source,
study
the
by
source button.
Science Alert found.
Science Alert
Right there.
isn't
Yeah.
a scientific. You know that this isn't a scientific journal, right?
Science
is a-
Alert.
This isn't a scientific journal. You know that, right?
Oh gosh, it's your opinion.
Also, literally, the headline: "The world is losing forests, but some are actually growing larger." What this is saying is that
Yeah.
some forests are growing larger, but the world as a whole is losing forests. We can even just read this
No,
if
it's
you
not
want.
saying that. It's not saying that. Stupid.
Do you wanna just
science.
do you wanna
It's
just
saying
read
the
it?
complete opposite.
Do you want to
It's
just
saying
read
the
it, Smooth
complete
Brain?
opposite.
Let's read it.
Huh?
Okay. So
Dr. Stupid, I don't understand how you can read the
forest
AI
fragmentation.
overview and
Okay,
then
so this
think
is
that
forest
it's gonna say something
fragmentation.
different.
Researchers
Okay.
conducted a study that mapped changes in global forest fragmentation. Okay, so they studied forest fragmentation, not total forest coverage. Their results show that the most biodiverse forests on the planet, those found in the tropics, continue to suffer increasing fragmentation, mainly due to clearance for agriculture. However, the picture is very different in certain boreal, temperate, and subtropical regions. In particular, patches of forest in Western Canada, Western and far-reaching Russia, and central and southern China seem to be coming together. So this study is talking about how some forests are joining and other forests are fragmenting.
Yeah, some are going away, some are growing.
But
That
this
seems
has
kinda
nothing to do
natural,
with
doesn't it?
this has nothing to do with total coverage. So we can instead go to their source for
But-
the total
but
coverage.
Hold on. They're
No,
expanding.
not hold on. We're going to keep reading. This is the first source, not this link from Science Alert. This is the first source that this AI overview used. So let's read this. 36 countries are gaining more trees than they're losing. That sounds good. There are some countries that are gaining more trees than they're losing. We know that deforestation is an ongoing devastating problem. Satellite data has been tracking it closely for years. But another question has remained more elusive. How much new forest is growing? Thanks to new data from researchers at the University of Maryland, WRI, we now have an answer. Tree cover, lots of it, is cropping up all over the globe. All told, 130.9 million hectares of land gained tree cover globally between 20 and 2020, or 2000 and 2020. Put together, that's an area larger than Peru. It's not all good news. Even though the world gained a significant area of tree cover over the past 2 decades, it still lost much more, with an overall net loss of more than 100 million hectares. See? You're wrong.
No, I'm not. It just agreed with me. It just said that they're expanding.
Can you read this sentence for me?
Can you go back up and just reread what you just read?
Can you read this sentence for me?
Right. It's not all good because deforestation, they're cutting trees down, right?
There's a
naturally expanding.
An overall net loss.
I know you don't understand
overall,
what natural is when it comes to men and women.
Overall net loss of more than 100 million hectares. Do we agree that there's an overall net loss?
But did it say it expanded?
In some regions of the world.
All regions, it said. All told. Go ahead.
You have a hard time reading. All told, 130.9 million hectares of land.
Over the globe.
Yeah. And then they show you where. It's these places. These blue places.
Okay, so what?
But even though the world gained a significant area of tree cover over the past 2 decades, it still lost much more. With an overall...
100, but it gained 190 million.
No, it lost more. Million. The overall net loss of... Do you know what net loss means?
Well, more than 100, but how much did it gain? 191, right?
There was an overall net loss of more than 100 million hectares, meaning that it lost 100 million hectares more than it gained.
Yeah, but the forests are expanding right now.
No, they're not. They're shrinking. They've shrunk by 100 million hectares in the last 20 years.
The science, so
we literally just read it. You have very, very hard time reading, don't you?
So you're denying the science.
Literally.
So in China
okay.
and Australia,
this is embarrassing for you.
So it's embarrassing. You're denying the science right there.
Because we read it right here.
You searched
it says with an overall net loss of more than 100 million hectares.
Okay,
you know what?
How much did it say was gained? How much did it say was gained?
You know what I should do?
Make sure you close out.
I mean, it's on YouTube. We can all read it. I should change my background from MAGA as anti-science to MAGA as anti-literacy.
Right, because it just said that forests were.
Because you don't know how to read.
And your Dr. Science smart brain was like, expansion means retraction.
Yes, we grant that.
Women can have penises. That's all real. Theories are fact. You are literally.
Are you done?
You are literally the dumbest person I've ever debated. I cannot believe there's actually a school out there that gave you a PhD. Out of all the people that I debate on YouTube, literally you are the dumbest. And
do you think that this
because you call yourself a doctor?
Do you think that this crash out is?
You literally just read that it expanded by 190 million, whatever.
Yeah, and there's a net loss of 100 million.
But
there's a net loss of 100. No, not a loss, a net loss.
You think
it's like you don't know what the word net.
190.
Do you know what a net loss is? Hey, science first. So maybe I'll put this in terms you can understand. So let's say I run a company, right? And I have a profit of, I don't know, $2,000 or something, right? But my net profit is minus $1,500. Did I lose money or did I gain money?
Well, when you search for forests are expanding and it says, yes, forests are expanding, and then you say, no, they're not expanding, that makes you pretty stupid, doesn't it?
So in the example I gave you, am I gaining money or losing money?
So you just learned about forest expansion 45 seconds ago.
You're right. And
you admitted you knew nothing about it.
You're right. And I'm so much smarter than you that even after 45 seconds,
agreed with me.
I'm so much smarter than you that even after 45 seconds, I know more about this topic than you ever will in your entire life. That's the embarrassing part for you. It's like so embarrassing.
So the forests aren't expanding?
No, they're not. Apparently not. I actually didn't know, but thank you for telling me about this because yes, the forests are shrinking.
Well, you should have known that the forests are shrinking then.
Thank you for teaching me about this.
Dr. Climate Scientist over here doesn't.
Oh no, I'm not a climate scientist. This isn't my field of expertise.
Well, no, but you're saying that I'm a science denier, and you've never even looked into if forests are expanding or shrinking.
Well,
Like
thank you for
you're
thank you
telling
for
me that I'm denying science because
Yep.
I don't agree with climate change, right? Man-made climate change, and you don't even know if
So
the
to be
forests are
clear, do we
expanding or
agree that the
shrinking,
forests are shrinking?
right?
Did you just agree to
Do
that?
you think it's mature of you, Dr. Science, to form that type of an opinion without even
Yes.
knowing if the forests are
Yes,
expanding or
because
shrinking?
whether the
Wow.
forests are expanding or shrinking
You're a
says
very
nothing about
mature
whether the temperature
scientist.
is increasing.
You're such a mature scientist, you know that?
You should change your name to Science Last. Anyway, I'm going to move on to another
I
guest. Any
should.
last words?
Yeah, you don't know anything that you're talking about. The forests are expanding; they're not shrinking. Pangea is a good explanation of why oceans are probably rising because the tectonic plates are always shifting, and they could give false ideas that oceans are rising. Darwin's theories are every day being proven false more and more. The God equation of the universe is expanding more and more with the universe, which is amazing. I would tell your entire audience to give up the idea that you're going to have physical evidence for anything in life and look towards the ontological argument towards God, because you're never
Okay,
going
thank
to
you for
get.
being here. I should have just let him I should have just let him continue to go because, look, the thing is I don't pick the people who come up. He was the one who made his side look bad. It wasn't my fault. You can't blame me for him, making the MAGAs look bad. Anyway, we have a whole bunch of super chats to go over. Captain 75 with the $5. Thank you. This is the guy that called last week. His name was MAGA Scientist. He is a computer engineer. Oh, it's that guy. Wait, he doesn't even have a bachelor's degree? From Garba Gaiman with the 10 Canuck bucks, long-time supporter. Thank you, Garba Gaiman. Electrical theory, germ theory, atomic theory. Someone who claims to know science should know that science only does theories. That's a good point. Dragonfly Jones with the $2 says, read the definition of scientific theory to him. Okay, let's do it. Scientific... Oh, I can't type. Theory definition. A scientific theory we'll use the AI overview, even though maybe we shouldn't. A scientific theory is a well-substantiated explanation of some aspect of the natural world based on a body of facts that have been repeatedly confirmed through observation and experiment. That's roughly good. From Abe San with the $5. Thank you. You guys are so generous today. There is a difference between scientific theory and colloquial use of theory. People tend to use theory in what would be called a hypothesis. Yeah, that's exactly it. Abe San says, have the color search for scientific theory with $2 again. Fear's interaction with the $5. Shame on you, Blitz, for indulging this guy's humiliation kink. Right? I should bring him up again. That was really funny. Natalie Ainge with the $2. Can someone ask him what a gay woke science is? This apparently, that's a wedding ring, by the way. This is apparently gay woke science that we're doing here. From Mostly Gizzards with the $5. Bro took an online IQ test and was bragging he was in the top 90%. Yeah, that's rough and probably true. Ed Wolf with the $2 says, tell guest to change his name to Science Last. I took your advice. And Natalie Ainge, again, with the $5. Thank you so much. Please ask him what gay science is. I need to know. Maybe if he comes up next time, I'll ask him. What a character. All right, let's bring up another guest. What a character. Oh, and by the way, we also got a Cash App, I believe, that I should read. From Darius Voss. Explain to him what a scientific theory is. Well, it's already too late now. From a good friend. Stop this, man. Stop this. Man is already dead. Lamau, you can't possibly embarrass him more. Well, bet. All right, let's bring up another guest from TikTok. All right, this person's not coming up. Let's bring up Oath-Based. Oath-Based, how's it going?
What's up,
I'm
Dr.
doing-
Blitz? How you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. Do you think that climate change is real?
Do I think climate change is real?
Mhm.
Do I think that humans affect the climate? Yeah.
Do you think that humans are causing the warming of the planet?
To some degree, yeah. I think that the amount is debatable, even among climate scientists. Like whether it's 40% of the increase of temperature is due to that, or just we just recently came out of an ice age, correct? We're actually technically still
We
in
are,
an
we
ice
are
age.
in an ice age.
Yeah, technically, yeah. But 10,000 years ago, like majority of the world was covered in ice, and we
Yeah,
don't
that
know
was
why.
called glacial maximum.
Eh,
I'm asking
uh,
about the temperature rise in the last 200 years.
Right. Well, the temperature has been rising for 10,000 years, correct?
Not really, no.
Are you sure?
It's been pretty stable. Yeah,
You might want to look this up. The world is completely covered in ice.
I'm aware. So like I mean, so hold on, let me see if I can find data for the past 10,000 years, because there's a common chart that's over the past 800,000 years, which would be too zoomed out. There's a common chart over the past 2,000 years. I'm looking for one that's over the past 10,000 years.
Yeah, if you look at the one from 800,000 years, you'll see that
Okay.
we're actually much cooler now than we have been in the last 800,000.
Sure, I'll pull up the ice core data. Actually, does the ice core data give us information about temperature? I think it just gives us information about CO2, but I know that it exists. I know this data exists. Yeah, okay. So it'll be kind of small, but let me pull it up. Here we go. This one? Yeah, here we go. Greenhouse gas concentrations regulator its temperature. So here we have, I don't know if you can see this now. So here we have Antarctic temperature of the last 800,000 years. If we look over the last 10,000 years, it's, I can't even see on the, like, where on the chart. Is that maybe that's here? Is when that started? Maybe.
Yep, it's 10,000 years. Yep.
And so yeah, it may have been significantly colder 10 or 12,000 years ago. But if we go look, and so you very well could be right. If we go look at a time scale over 2,000 years, we see a different story. So
yeah, people can manipulate the graph to show you the part of the graph that looks the worst, or looks like, as you see in the 800,000 graph, you see the charts go up and down, up and down, up and down.
This is 2,000 years, right? So these are. So the climate was pretty stable for 2,000 years. It cooled a little bit in the medieval ages, but not significantly. And now we've like shot up. So like the point is that like at least over the last 2,000 years it was pretty stable prior to us doing the Industrial Revolution.
But you just saw that one shoot up 10,000 years ago, and
that was a significant drop, right?
No, look at it again. It's a significant increase from 10,000 years. So now it's a sharp.
So except that's still over the course of thousands of years, right?
Right. What do we know? What caused that?
That's a good question. I don't know, but that's
that's the thing is.
But to be clear,
we don't know at all. And
to be clear,
that now we're blaming humans.
So
when
oath based. To be clear, the point is that warming took place over a much longer period of time than the current warming is. Right? The current warming has taken place over less than 1,000 years. Whereas on the chart we just looked at, 1 pixel was like probably 2,000 years or so.
100 years, yeah.
And that warming took place over the course of like 4 or 5 pixels. So that's a warming over the course of thousands of years, whereas the warming that we're seeing now is over the course of 200 years. So the question is what's causing the current warming? And you can actually do a time series analysis of the potential causes and analyzing forcing, basically.
Right.
And what you find is that in the past, prior to the 1850s, say, there was not really an association. There was not really a causal association between CO2 in the atmosphere and temperature. CO2 in the atmosphere didn't cause temperatures to increase prior to about 200 years ago. After about 250 years ago, that trend flipped, and now it is the main driving factor of the increase in temperature. Something like, it depends on how much you want, but you can calculate it to be like 75 to 80%, is CO2 produced by humans, is the main driving factor of the warming that's currently happening. Now, you can argue about other things, but that's irrelevant for what's happening now.
CO2 is the main driving factor. Is that fundamental agreed on upon scientists?
Yes.
Because I believe in order for us to know why the temperature regulates already on Earth, like the temperature fluctuates over time periods, right? We have to know why that
very long time periods, yeah.
We have to know why that happens in order to deduce what's causing.
We know why it happens. It's called the greenhouse effect.
So you're saying that the warming 10,000 years ago was due to the greenhouse effect?
No, I don't know offhand what caused the warming away from the last.
Yeah, we don't know.
But we can. Well, to say we don't and to say I don't are different things.
What
caused the warming out of the glacial maximum? Let's just Google this. The warming out of the last glacial maximum, this is the AI overview, so trust it at,
Okay.
at your word, but just as a summary, the warming out of the last glacial maximum was primarily caused by a combination of orbital changes, the Milankovitch cycles, and a subsequent increase in atmospheric greenhouse gases, particularly carbon dioxide. These factors led to a positive feedback loop, amplifying the initial warming and resulting in significant ice sheet melt and sea level rise. So actually, it seems like what they're saying is that there was a Milankovitch cycle that increased the temperature, and that increase in the temperature led to an increase in CO2 levels, which caused the feedback loop to cause the warming. But that's not what we're seeing here.
Ask the AI if there's consensus on that theory.
I'm just using AI Google overview, but
Yeah, that's fine. Ask if they're because they're not. There's gonna be some scientists that believe that we were hit by asteroids on our North Pole.
I don't think that that's anywhere close to the scientific consensus. No, you're talking about the mud flood, which is like essentially a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, the Younger Dryas impact theory. But there's
that's not taken seriously. No.
Well, did the AI say that there's
I'm looking.
consensus?
It's not saying anything about consensus. I'd have to actually have a whole conversation, which I'm not going to do on a live stream. But the point is that like what there is consensus for is that human caused or anthropogenic CO2 emissions, that's human caused CO2 emissions, are the driving force in today's climate change. There absolutely is consensus on that.
Is the driving force? I mean, over 50%.
Yes, over 50%. The majority of the cause. Yes.
Yeah. See, I think that's debatable, but I do believe that
debatable
will have some type
debatable
of
with whom?
Over the scientific community, over the consensus. I've looked at the what is it the climate change
consensus on human cause. Let's just Google this.
Okay, yeah,
let's just find, is there consensus on human caused climate change?
Okay,
so this is from NASA. Maybe you don't trust NASA. But as of 2014, based on well-established, this is a quote now, based on well-established evidence, about 97% of climate scientists have concluded that human-caused climate change is happening.
Yeah. That's a ridiculous thing to argue.
Okay.
That humans don't influence the climate.
No, human-caused climate change, meaning that humans are causing the climate change.
Humans cause the Earth to heat up. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, human-caused climate change.
Okay, but see how ridiculous that argument. When the Earth was already heating up before humans were
but
even.
But it wasn't. We have temperature records from prior to the 1800s, and the temperature was stable.
Ever since 10,000 years ago, the Earth has been on a steadily increase of up.
No, that's not true. Over the last 2,000 years, it was stable and in fact decreased a little bit. I just showed you a chart of that.
There might be points in the graph where, like, some decades might be, or
this isn't
millennia might be a tad bit warmer than others. But over the overall, you can look at the graph you just showed, where it's 800,000 year graph. You can see that 10,000 years ago, the Earth was a whole lot colder than it is now, and it's been on this steadily increase for 10,000 years.
It has not been on a steady increase, and I'll show you again how we know.
I mean,
like
steady,
pretty evidently not on a steady increase, right? Here you go, not on a steady increase.
Yeah. What's that graph? 2,000 years?
2,000 years.
Okay, we'll broaden the graph out.
That's as far as this graph goes.
Well, broaden. Is that the only graph available?
I mean, I can show you another graph from the past 2,000 years if you want me to pull.
No, how about break it down to 5,000 years or 10,000 years?
Well, the only ones I could find were 800,000 and 2,000, but I can look for 5,000 years. See if I can find more data on that. That's like more.
I'm sure they will.
Yeah, here we go. Okay, I actually found one exactly like what you wanted. Let me make sure that this is actually a good source, just because I don't want to spread misinformation. So this is actually, interestingly enough, they're providing. Yeah, okay, here we go. They're citing their sources at least. Let me pull it up and show you. So here we go.
Okay.
So this is over the last 10,000 years. So we were at glacial maximum about 10,000 years ago. And then it was pretty stable, and then it decreased. And then it shot up.
Hold on. Let's do this graph. Wait, what source are they getting from? It says the temperature chart for the past 11,000 years.
This graph is from Klaus Bittermann, Global Temperature Reconstruction from Proxy Data of Marcotte et al., which was published in the Science Journal in 2013.
So they're saying it was warmer in the what year? What year was that?
Well, it was never warmer than it
height.
is now. It was never warmer
Yeah,
than it is now.
in the last 10,000 years, it's warmer
But like
than now.
6,000 years ago, it was warmer than it was 2,000 or 4,000 years
6,000 years
ago,
ago,
is what they're
it's
saying.
warmer.
Yeah. But this
No,
graph should worry you, right?
yeah, that graph definitely does worry me. I don't know why it doesn't coincide with the other graphs I've seen.
Well, you probably haven't seen another graph that's zoomed in this much. If you're looking at a graph over 800,000 years, you're going to have a hard time figuring out when the climate, like when those temperatures happen, when those temperature changes happened, right?
Right.
Anyway, so I mean, given that like a vast majority of scientists believe that human-caused CO2 emissions are the main driver in climate change, do you think that that is a thing that's real?
Yeah, of course. I never debated that. I just disagree on fundamentally, all right,
What
with
do you
the
disagree on?
amount with the amount that humans are
So
causing
you do
climate.
disagree that humans are like the main driving factor in climate change?
It doesn't matter if it's 50% or 80% or 20%. It doesn't matter. I think that we should do something about it. But to the level at which I disagree on, especially when it comes to climate activists, is the rate at which we should change and the harmful effects it could do to society when
Well,
you
the
try to
harmful
implement
effects
it.
are also agreed upon by like climatologists: rising sea levels, increased desertification,
Well, I was
etc.
talking about the harmful effects of introducing these policies.
Oh, okay. Well, that's not the topic of debate here. I'm just interested in whether people are willing to accept scientific consensus or not.
Well, you admit that there is harmful things that happen when you try to implement the climate activist policies.
Not that I've seen, but that's also not the topic of debate today. So,
What do you mean you don't know that you've seen? Like, I'll give you a simple
yeah,
example.
not that I've
Okay,
seen.
California, they
But
outlawed. Okay, I'll give you a simple example. In
Mhm.
California, they outlawed all like gas-powered lawn equipment.
Okay,
Okay, you don't see nothing harmful with that?
what's harmful about that?
How about the 20,000 lawnmower repair shops that were put out of business?
Wait, you can't repair an electric
Wait.
lawnmower?
If people have a specific industry in repairing gas engines, okay, and if you suddenly take that source of income away, you don't think that damages them?
It might. One sec. Because
Well,
someone's
what's
saying
not
that
even
didn't
true?
actually happen.
No, that did happen. You can look it up.
Hold on. I'm just double checking because you said one thing, somebody else said another thing. I just want to double check.
Yeah, double check.
So yeah, so
But see,
so you cannot buy gas-powered lawn care equipment that was manufactured after December 31st, 2023. Absolutely true.
okay.
It includes a $30
Yeah,
million
no.
in state rebates to homeowners and landscapers. Okay, yeah, I guess that those are like the two main parts of the bill. Sure. Okay. So it sounds like what you're saying is that like we just shouldn't develop new technology, right?
No.
I mean, like,
no. What I'm saying is,
like, yeah, if we stop burning coal, yeah, coal miners will be put out of business, and it's not good that people lose their jobs, but it's also not good to burn coal. But regardless, that's
yeah,
a policy discussion, and that's not the topic of discussion today. So
I know
look,
you're saying, but I was gonna put it on a really simple point: the fact that these climate activists, right, will enact policy without even considering the downstream ramifications. Because in that bill, they said nothing about the lawnmower repair shops. Like they completely just act like they didn't even acknowledge that they were there. So I believe that's a consideration that a lot of climate activists don't have for what their policies do.
I'm actually curious to see how many lawnmower repair shops actually closed. Because like, do we have any data to support that it actually did hurt people?
I haven't looked into it specifically, but to assume that it wouldn't or it isn't, then it's a ridiculous argument to have. You're saying that the lawnmower repair shops won't be affected by this?
Well, I don't know. Maybe they would. Maybe they would
Maybe
adapt.
they will. Maybe.
But the point is,
you're a pretty logical guy. Now you think maybe?
So look,
You're rational.
so oath-based. I'm interested in having conversations that are based on evidence and data, right? What's true about the world, what's not true about the world. If we have evidence that this is happening, then yeah, that's bad for those people, and I feel bad that their industry, that their job is being lost, is being hurt by these policies. I agree. That has nothing to do with what the scientific consensus is. What the scientific consensus is that humans are causing the vast majority of the climate change that we're seeing today, and that climate change will have negative impacts on things like sea life, on things like the ability to grow food, on things like the ability to live near live near the ocean, basically. And so what we do with that information, what we do with the truthful information that the various things will be, affected in various ways, what we do with that information, that's a policy decision. And if you want to say, well, okay, I get that, we might displace 200 million people over the next 50 years. I get that fisheries will see a drop in income over the next 50 years, a 50% drop in income over the next 50 years. I realize that all these things will happen, but I think it's probably more damaging to enact climate change policy because it'll hurt the people that have certain jobs. That's a policy decision that you can make, as long as you're making it well informed on what's actually going to happen. That's my point. Like, if you want to have a policy position, we can argue about policy, but we can't even argue about policy until we agree on what the facts are.
I'm open to new information. Like, so the graph you showed me, I haven't seen. I'm gonna do some follow up research, but I'll grant you that. So since humans, like, it looked like the chart said, wait, 1850 is when that spike started.
So usually it depends on when you start counting, but usually like on any chart over the last 1,000 years, you'll see it start to rise slowly in like the early 1800s.
The early 1800s, yeah. Well, from that chart that I just saw, I didn't see it, but it looked like it was a pretty sharp incline, and from then it's still inclining at that rate.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think that since the 1800s, I think we've had a lot more automobiles, a lot more factories. Like, you'd think it would have a sharper increase as time went on, but I could be wrong.
Oh, it has. It has. It's been so much worse in the last 50 years than it was in the 150 years before that.
And then
it actually has been a lot worse.
And there's a direct correlation between that and
yep.
Yeah, because that 1850 mark just seems to be like a complete 180, and I don't think there was that many cars driving around in 1850s.
So it's not actually. So what happened in the early 1800s is that we basically started burning coal to power machines.
Yeah, steam powered engines.
Yeah, and so that's what did it, right?
Yeah, but it wasn't industrialized like it is today, or even in the 1900s.
No, but so that's why it's gotten so much worse now. Like, let me show you another chart. We love charts. We love us some charts, right? Let me pull it up. This one. Right, so this is just going back to 1880. And you can see that since like the 70s, it's like skyrocketed. It's been like up and down. There's been like a general upward trend since the 1880s. But since the 1970s, it's just been going like basically straight up.
Yeah. Do we know what causes the downs or no?
I mean, so the thing is when you're taking data like this, you generally take averages.
Right.
Just because the climate it's generally very complicated. So it's more used to look at general trends than it is to look at like an individual year that's cold.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. That's why I thought the 10,000 year trend would say it's been heating up, but you showed me a graph that it wasn't. It's really surprising. Because the Earth was so much more colder than it is now. But that graph said that it wasn't even that cold compared to the 1900s.
Well, yeah, I mean, it got colder and then it got warmer again, right?
Yeah, but it was like the majority of the world was covered in ice.
So this should tell you, Oath-based, that, and this everybody who's watching, this should tell you small changes in the average temperature of the Earth can have enormous impacts on what the Earth actually looks like. You decrease the temperature of the Earth by 3 or 4 degrees, and the whole thing will be covered with ice.
Fair enough.
That's how like people think like, oh, if I turn up, the difference between 72 and 74 in my house isn't that big of a difference. But we're talking about the whole world, which is it makes just a few degrees much more significant.
So you're saying that the yearly rates, can really impact the global cooling and the global weather structure. So we should know what those.
So it's not the weather; it's the average temperature over year by year.
Oh, so it's a year long, like, a heat wave or a year long, whatever the opposite of a heat wave is, can really affect, the global temperature for a long time. What
Well,
you're saying, right?
sort of, except not really. The point is that if
Hmm.
the average temperature is, say, 5 degrees cooler now than it was, if the average temperature, say, was 5 degrees cooler than it is now for 100 years, then the Earth would be covered in ice. There'd be the ice caps would be so much bigger. But like if there's just a single year that's particularly cold, that won't really do much because then the next year the ice will melt.
Fair point. Fair point. But I believe that we should know what causes these, year, like whatever, like say, well, I think
I
what
mean,
just said, like
look,
in
so
1945, like
CO2
it got
emissions.
a lot colder.
So CO2
But we
emissions.
should know what causes that, right?
So CO2 emissions, for example, fell dramatically in 2021, and that was because of COVID, right?
Yeah, we know that. Yeah.
And we also know that like during the period of, in fact, this is one plausible explanation. I can look into this, but this is one plausible explanation. After the 30s, so in the 30s, refrigerants really started to be used, like non, these are things
I
like
know.
CFCs.
I
CFCs
know.
started to be
Yeah.
used in like the 30s and 40s when the refrigerator was invented.
Yeah, the Freon.
And those
Yeah.
things tend to cool the atmosphere. Or
Really?
sorry, not CFCs. CFCs are greenhouse gases. There's another compound which was used a lot, that can have a reverse effect. But it was also damaging the ozone. Maybe it was CFCs. I'd have to double check. The point is that humans do a lot of different things. We emit CO2. We also emit a whole bunch of other chemicals, and those chemicals can have varying effects in varying ways. We also like build cities, and that affects how much light is reflected. There's like a lot of stuff going on, so that's why I have to look at general trends.
Mm-hmm. Right. But you deduce all those fluctuations as human activities.
Well, no, perhaps not all of them. But the point is that
But
there is a general trend going up, and so the dominant feature is clearly CO2. I mean, we can see it in the data that we have. The dominant feature is CO2, and that's causing the general upward trend.
okay, yeah, but don't you think it's important to know the fluctuations before humans were remodeling their environment? I think that's an important data
I
point that
mean,
we're just missing right now.
climatologists do study that, but that's not really relevant for the question of whether the trend is upward or downward and what's causing that trend.
But I think to understand something that you claim a lot of human interference in the way the weather is right now and the climate change that it affects. So I would assume that a data point that's missing in all these scientists, in terms of their evaluations on 100-year cycles or whatever, a data point that's just straight missing, and I feel like it's an extremely important one.
So
Don't you?
to be clear, just because I don't know it doesn't mean that it's missing.
Well,
we can just look. We can just like Google it and see if this information is available.
okay.
And I just found a paper called An Anatomy of the Cooling of the North Atlantic in the 1960s and 70s. That's when
Mhm.
there was like this kind of like dip in the temperature.
Right.
And so we can read
Their
so this
theory
paper
on
was
it.
published 11 years ago. We can read about it. People study this thing. Or people study like these kinds of phenomena. And so apparently there's at least some speculation that it was caused by like sulfate aerosols. I could look further into this. You could look further into this, but this is all to say, like, just because I don't know it doesn't mean that we don't know it as like a collective
Well,
humanity.
I've looked into it, and
So what's the cause of the cooling in the 60s and 70s?
I think the AI brought up something to do with some kind of cycle that the Earth is. So we're running like elliptical.
The Milankovitch cycle? No, the Milankovitch cycle isn't relevant on timescales of hundreds of years. The Milankovitch cycle is 26,000 years long.
Right, but I'm talking about there could be other cycles that we just don't know about. The fact that we don't know these smaller cycles or what impacts the weather.
We do know about the other cycles. There's also a 12-year cycle that the sun goes through.
Right.
We are currently right at peak at the peak, or we're just past the peak of solar activity. The thing is like climatologists do actually know quite a lot.
Yeah, I understand.
So I don't know what the concern is.
Yeah, the concern is I feel like there's still missing data points in the fact that so we don't understand these giant cycles like on a millennial year cycle of like these data points that all of a sudden
have you spoken with climate scientists about this?
It will be a lot hotter. I've looked into it. Like for instance,
have you spoken with climate scientists about this? Not
I've
have you
looked
spoken with climate scientists?
I've looked in the research and paper. I haven't spoken.
Okay,
I don't know,
you should speak to a climate scientist about this because I suspect they actually do have the answers to your questions.
I believe that someone will have theories and that there'll be non-consensus around them.
That seems like a big claim.
Well, I gave an example already about the last glacial maximum.
I didn't know the answer. That doesn't mean that climate
You
scientists didn't
looked
know the
up
answer.
and found out there wasn't a consistent around the answer.
No, AI
But,
didn't.
and I think that's
No, I looked it up, and AI was just not spitting out there is no consensus, and it wasn't spitting out there is consensus. It just didn't understand the question I was asking. Because I probably didn't
understand it.
right. Yeah, you have to like,
Well,
you have to massage AI prompts and all this. Anyway, so it sounds like you're interested in listening. You're interested in listening to the scientific consensus, which is a good thing. Would you call yourself MAGA?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. Do you think that MAGA generally, as far as policy, as far as the policy that's being suggested and the things that MAGA politicians and MAGA news outlets say, do you think that these positions that they're holding are generally pro-science?
It depends if the science agrees with their moral intuitions or not. And I believe that majority of humans operate in that manner, in that mind space. I believe that if there was science that was against your moral intuitions, you would have hesitancy agreeing with it.
Sure, but so you do agree that. So do you agree that generally their moral intuitions go against the scientific consensus?
Yeah, but that same thing's true for everybody. We saw this already with the whole gender spectrum thing. I'm sure that's something that you.
Sorry, what moral intuition do you think I have that goes against the scientific consensus?
That there's no correlation between sex and gender.
I don't believe that.
No, well, a majority of people on the left, not MAGA, had this thought, even though
I've never. By the way, I've spoken with a lot of leftists. So I'm pretty far left myself. I've never met a single one who thinks that there's no correlation between sex and gender.
Yeah, so you believe that gender is somehow tied to sex, and that there's not something.
I mean, they're clearly related, but they're not the same thing.
They're related.
Yeah.
There's no correlation there or causation.
Well, no, there is correlation and potentially causation, but it depends on which direction you think the causation is going. But of course, there's correlation. Most males are men. Most females are women. That's of course there's correlation. But the point is that the position that gender and sex are different things, related but different things, that is actually the scientific consensus amongst neuroscientists.
It's neuroscientists. What about biologists?
Neuroscientists are the type of biologists who study the brain.
Yeah, they study the brain, and how the brain operates. Yeah.
Which is the relevant thing when talking about like sex and gender, right?
Yeah. I guess I don't know. I'm not convinced that unless there's a actual physical phenomenon that's putting a woman brain, like if there's a difference between a woman brain and man brain, and that there's somehow the woman brain is being put in a man's body, then I would believe. But I believe that there's some papers on that show that there is some characteristics. That's not something leftists usually agree with.
There are some. So amongst trans folks, there are some brain differences from cisgendered folks. Absolutely. That's absolutely true. But I mean, even at the level of psychology, we don't, as far as I know, and perhaps I'm wrong, somebody in the chat could correct me if I'm wrong about this. As far as I know, we haven't identified like the part of the brain difference that causes like, like that definitively causes like autism or ADHD. But like that doesn't mean that those aren't real things.
Yeah, but you're sidetracking my point. The point is like
the point is that this could be a human psychology thing, which is not easily mapped onto easily studied brain structures.
But they have found correlations, strong correlations. Okay, but are you denying this is the case that there's sometimes that there is a man's brain and a female's brain, and sometimes they end up in the wrong body?
Well, okay, I wouldn't say that it's a man's brain and a woman's brain, but there are differences between
males.
People. Well, it's not even like that. It's that like transgender people tend to be more in the middle of features, especially for particular features of the brains. They tend to be more in the middle between what would be considered typical male and typical female brains.
No, they did the same thing with homosexuals, and they found that the
there's also brain correlations there too.
The degree of difference between say a cis person and a trans person is the same degree of separation between a trans person and a homosexual.
It's a different type of separation in different places, but there are at least in some trans people there are at least differences. The point is that even
you're arguing with me about science right now, and I just read the paper on it. See, are you anti-science?
Okay. Tell me, what's the paper? We'll pull it up.
I don't remember it. I'll have to search.
I thought you said you just read the paper on it.
I did like 2 days ago. But listen, so if I find this paper, would you then agree with me that you're anti-science?
I would. If you send me the paper, then I'll read the paper and I'll be like, yeah, this is right.
Yeah, but
I would just agree with you.
Let's go ahead and agree with me beforehand. So if
why
you
would
read
I
this
agree
paper,
with you before I'm familiar with what your scientific claim is?
Because you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying.
So from what I've read something that is contrary to what you've read. So if you have something more recent that contradicts the information I have, I'd love to know it. That's what being
Yeah.
pro-science is about. It's about informing yourself on what is true about the world around us.
Okay. But would you grant my argument then?
If what you're saying is true,
if I send
absolutely
you
great
this
argument.
paper,
Yeah, if what you're saying is true,
okay,
but
all right,
I think
I'll go
I've seen
find
the
it.
paper that you're talking about, and I don't think it is. I don't think that you're interpreting it correctly. But that's neither
No,
here nor
no.
there. I mean, like, if what you're saying is true scientifically, then sure, it's true.
So you believe that there's from according to this paper, right? And if the paper turns out to be true and
Yep.
is replicable, then there is a diagnosable way that you can identify trans people, right?
If what you're saying is true, then yeah, that would be the case.
Yeah. And so this whole idea that gender is a spectrum is kind of
No, it would
thrown out the
still
window
be a
then, huh?
spectrum. That's the point, right? It would still be a spectrum.
How so? If it's literally just a man's or male brain and male whatever put into a female's body, then how would that be a spectrum then? The
Well,
people that are
because
calling themselves
so for example, and I'll just give you an example of the things I have read. So you can study the sizes of various regions of the brain, and what you'll find is that males tend to have a larger region and females tend to have a smaller region. And so what you'll find is that, a trans woman might have smaller than average, like significantly smaller than average for a male, and it'll be closer to a female, but it's still between the two. And so there you would have a spectrum, because no brain anatomy, no brain feature is binary. It'll change continuously between one size and another. And so the point is that you can still have a spectrum, even if you find that there is some way, some neurological way to detect whether or not someone is trans. Now, it's not clear to me at all that this is like a super reliable way to do it, because apparently the differences are pretty small. But I mean, if it is the case that we can just like scan someone's brain and figure out if they're trans, cool.
So you would agree with that? So people are like that
if that's possible, great. That seems great. Then we can start intervention earlier.
Yeah, but you don't think this would hurt the trans movement, where people the gender fluidity?
No, I don't think so. Because if you still have a spectrum, i.e., you still have a region between A and B, then that means that you'd be able to find people in the middle.
All right. So, but hold on. So
you could still have
some people that would
there's
identify
no
as
issue
one
with
thing
that.
one day,
Sorry.
and some people that would identify as one thing, right? But their
Mhm.
brain scan comes back saying, "Hey, actually, no, you're 100%, in the right body with the right brain."
Well, so then we have to ask, okay, so then why are they having this experience?
Oh, so
if the
you would
brain scan says
you would
this?
disagree with the science then?
No, I'm asking a scientific question. Look, if we have the hypothesis that
Right.
a trans person's brain is distinct from a cis person's brain, right? If we have that hypothesis, and then we go and we find somebody whose brain lines up with their sex, but they still have a different experience, well, now that seems like that's evidence against the hypothesis. So we would need to now explain, why is this phenomenon happening? That's a scientific question that we can study. Psychology,
Right.
sociology, neuroscience, like we can study that, and we'd have to figure it out, because clearly, if our hypothesis is saying if your brain matches up with your sex, then you shouldn't be having these this kind of trans or fluid experience, and yet you have people who do have like a transgender experience or a gender fluid experience, then something is wrong with our hypothesis.
Or they could be just not telling the truth.
Yeah, but generally speaking, when we're doing psychology, it's
Mhm.
really, really hard to prove that someone is lying about something. It also, consider what would be the potential motivations for someone to lie about their own experience? To be more oppressed? To be looked down upon by half of the population? It just seems very strange.
Or be celebrated by the other half of the population.
Perhaps, but look, generally when we do statistical analysis, especially in psychology, you generally don't assume people are lying. You generally assume that people are truthfully representing their experience, because they're the only one. Otherwise, we have no way to figure out what they're experiencing, right?
Right. But see, the problem is, say with anorexia, we know it's a real thing, but it was a bigger thing, right? It was a bigger thing back when I was in school. It was a really problem, especially among young girls with body dysmorphia. Okay, but that has went down drastically. But in the inverse, the trans, another type of body dysmorphia, has increased, right?
Yeah, well, so it's absolutely true that diagnosed gender dysphoria has increased. Whether that's because it's accepted more now, or whether there's some other cause, that's a good question. I kind of suspect that it's because it's people are more familiar with it, so if they have certain experiences, they can latch onto a term and say, "Hey, this sounds like what I have." But who's to say? Anyway, the point is you made the original claim.
What do you think caused? What do you think caused the anorexia problem when I was in school?
I have no idea.
You don't know?
No,
You don't think it was
I
a
haven't
cultural
looked into
thing?
it. I haven't looked into it, so I can't comment on it.
Well, you just don't want to say it, but most lefties, I think it's agreed consensus that it was a cultural thing that was imposed on young girls to be skinnier, and
Okay,
so
maybe it was.
therefore they call it body dysmorphia.
Maybe it was. I mean, it could be.
Okay.
I just haven't looked into it.
Okay.
So,
And then it
look,
would also be a
look,
correlation with this same body dysmorphia that there's a sort of gratification
maybe.
or
Look, so
cultural.
culture and society can influence brain development, can influence psychology. Just like even if something is caused culturally, that doesn't mean it's not a real thing that we have to take seriously. Anyway, you brought up LGBTQ folks,
Yeah, true.
the trans question, because
Yeah,
you asserted that look, you hold views, you asserted to me, you hold views that, you know, because they don't agree
Moral
with your moral intuitions, that, you know, you're anti-science there. But clearly, as demonstrated by the conversation we just had, I'm not.
Mhm.
And I think generally most people on the left are more willing to read a paper and then be like, oh, I guess I was wrong, than conservatives tend to be.
I don't. I think that like me, I think you're slightly on the spectrum. I think that we're able to deduce without getting our emotions involved. Is that true?
I don't know. I was never tested.
You know, I wasn't either, but I think it's true. My wife thinks so. Does anybody, your friends, relatives, think that you might be slightly
Well,
on
look,
the spectrum?
so my mother is a physician, and when she was practicing, she her specialty was kids with autism and kids with ADHD.
Mhm.
And so you would have thought that if I was on the autistic spectrum, one would have
Mhm.
thought that she would have caught it, insofar as that was her expertise. So, you know, if I am somewhere on the
Mhm.
spectrum, it wasn't significant enough to be worthy of a diagnosis.
You know, have you ever been accused of being slightly on the spectrum before by your friends
Yeah,
or family?
probably.
Okay.
Probably, yeah. But anyway, look, so Oath-based, I appreciate you coming on, but I'm going to move on to somebody else. Anything else that you want to talk about before I kick you off?
Yeah. Thank you for the conversation. It was really enlightening. Maybe have me on some more in the future. We can deduce because obviously we both think logically, but we both end up on the different sides of the political aisle. I'd like to find out
That
why
we
that
do.
is.
All right, thanks for being here, bud.
Yep.
All right, let's bring up another guest. We have a guest from YouTube. By the way, if you like the live, consider supporting the live. Also, we have a few cash apps, so I should read those. Oh shoot, wait, we have a meeting today? Okay, I have a meeting today, but I think it's later. From Misty with the $25 cash app. Thank you so much. Thanks for talking about environmental issues. Yeah, they matter a lot to me. I'm black-pilled on climate change, so yeah, I will read those a lot. I do have some super chats to read too. Abe-san, from Elizabeth with the $5. W. I agree. W Elizabeth. From Abe-san with the $5, we have, why does MAGA have such problems with definitions such as consensus? What % of other countries not believe in anthropogenic climate change? That's a good question. I actually don't know the answer to that. From Eris385 with the $5 on YouTube. It's like being mad that the Pony Express went out of business because of trains and the telegram connecting the West to the rest of the US. Yeah, look, I understand why people would be upset that people will lose jobs, especially when those job losses are a result of policy changes. Because it just seems like the government is forcing you out of a job. But consider, that's what the current administration is doing. They're firing what, like 12,000 scientists? Where's the uproar about that? From Abeson with $2 again. Fossil fuel lobby talking points. Yes, very much so. 6 gram gross, or 6 a.m. gross with the $5. Lawnmower repair shops are going to be much busier because you can't buy gas-powered motors anymore, so the gas-powered ones will have to be repaired. That's actually a good point. And with the Abeson with the $2, males and females are different on average, but overlap. Yeah, that's a good assessment. All right, let's bring up Ethan Davis. And remember, like the live, if you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. Ethan, how's it going?
Hey, can you hear me?
I can. Do you think
perfect.
Do you think that climate change is real?
I would say generally, and based on the graphs you showed the other guy, we can say that there is an upward trend in the overall temperature of the Earth. But again, I would also question how much of it is human caused versus how much of it is environmentally caused.
So the majority of it is human caused.
Sure, I would probably agree with that. There was a lot of industrialization in the 1800s that probably did lead to a lot of that. But I would also say that back before we had a lot of industrialization, there were also lots of active volcanoes. I think of Pompeii specifically, and that does spew a lot of CO2 as well into the atmosphere, probably more than most cars would do. Now,
You'd be
we can say,
surprised. That's actually not true.
I
So
think
there's
I
a
would be surprised.
so we can test this. So there was an enormous eruption in 2022 by a volcano called Tonga. This was and so you can just calculate how much CO2 it emitted. It emitted like 1% of what humans emit on a yearly basis.
It was Tonga, you said?
TONGA.
Okay. 2022. CO2 emissions. Yeah, so AI overview, as we've proven, is not always the most accurate, but it does say the January Tonga Hapai eruption had effect, blah, blah, blah. It didn't spew a lot of CO2, but it did have a localized increase and introduce a significant amount of water vapor. It had a warming effect, potentially increasing the likelihood of temporarily exceeding the 1.5 Celsius warming threshold, which is more than less than 0.6 that we saw from the humans graph.
So just to be clear, I'm reading the same AI overview.
Yeah.
It says, however, it's important to understand the scale of these emissions compared to human-caused emissions. Estimated CO2 emissions from the eruption, scientific estimates suggest the eruption released in the range of 2 to 34 million metric tons of CO2. Comparison to human emissions, this is significantly less than the 36.8 billion with a B metric tons of CO2 emitted annually by human activities.
I see it now. Yeah, okay. I didn't see it first. I had to click on the closer depth view.
So at most it emitted like less than 1% of the CO2 that humans emit yearly.
Okay, but what about all of volcanic eruptions throughout all of history? Like, especially the example I gave, Pompeii, back in like the 1400s, that was a huge eruption. And I'm curious, have people...
Wait, Pompeii? Are you talking about the original Pompeii eruption, like in the Roman times?
Yeah.
That was like 2,000 years ago. That wasn't in the 1400s.
Okay.
I think it was in like 73 CE or something like this.
Oh yeah, probably. That was bad calculation.
We can maybe somebody would have estimated it.
Yeah, I'm actually curious if someone has tried to estimate that.
Let's see. This is for Vesuvius, right? Not Pompeii. It's Vesuvius.
Yeah,
it's the mountain.
Pompeii was a town. Yeah, Mount Vesuvius.
Role of non-MAGA. Okay, so that's not relevant. That's not relevant. Yeah, so it's not clear how much. Yeah, I can't find that anywhere. But on climate.gov, actually, I'm interested if this has been changed in the last 10 years. Oh no, this is from 2016, so it's probably still fine. So the first line, this article is titled, "Which emits more carbon dioxide, volcanoes or human activities?" The first line is, human activities emit more than 60 times the amount of carbon dioxide released by volcanoes each year. Large, violent eruptions may match the rate of human emissions for the few hours that they last, but they are too rare and fleeting to rival humanity's annual emissions. Like, it's like, and in fact, this has been studied for, like, you can look at what caused what, like what actually has causative power on climate change, on global mean surface temperature anomaly, which is the temperature change. And what you'll find is that the only thing that has even close to the amount of influence on the temperature range, or on the temperature change over the last 250 years is the sun. So the sun's brightness, and hence the sun's temperature, essentially changes on a 12-year cycle. And so what you'll see is that the amount of change caused by CO2 is about 3 times bigger than the amount of change caused by the fluctuations in the sun's brightness over a 12-year period. Volcanoes are about 1%, contribute about 1% to the have about 1% as much causative power on temperature change as human CO2 emissions do.
Okay, yeah, it's good to know.
Yeah. So would you say that you're MAGA?
I guess, how extreme do you mean? So I did vote for Trump 2020. But
did you vote for Trump 2024?
Yeah, 2016 and then 2024.
And
So I guess
2026.
I would consider myself a Trump supporter. I don't know if I would necessarily, because MAGA has a lot of connotation associated with it that I may not associate myself with.
Sure. Do you support the big beautiful bill?
I will admit I have not read it in depth as I
Nobody has.
should
It's
have.
1,000 pages long.
Right.
Have you? Do you support what you've read about it?
Generally,
Okay. Have you read anything about the science cuts that are going to be, or that are in it?
I have not.
Okay. Do you know how much money NASA's budget was last year, or
Last
2025?
year,
So the last year of Biden's budget.
Right. I'm gonna take a stab. I have to say it's close to $1 billion.
It's about 25 billion in 2025.
Okay, that's a lot.
And
Okay.
which is like 0.5% of the budget or something like this. And the request in 2026 is just shy of 19 billion. So it's a cut. It's like a 25% cut or something. Now, but NASA's budget is broken up into basically two chunks. Well, there's two chunks. There's two big chunks, and then there's a bunch of smaller things. So there's exploration. The exploration budget. This is like sending people to Mars, sending people to the moon.
Sure.
Not really science, but more just like putting people places. So that budget went up by 600 million in the proposed big beautiful bill, right?
Okay.
So that went up. Space exploration, cool. We're funding that more. Space technology, again, not really science, but space technology. This includes like, kind of innovation in like building new rockets and things like this. That was cut in half.
Okay.
From about 1.1 billion to 560 million. Keep in mind, this is a cut of $500 million, which seems a lot, but that's like $1.20 for each American citizen. The science budget, on the other hand, this is just pure science. So this includes earth science, planetary science, astrophysics, heliophysics. The science budget was cut in half, from $7.3 billion to $3.9 billion. And then there's other budgets like aeronautics, which are significantly smaller. Aeronautics is like $900 million budget and has dropped down to a $588 million budget. The engagement was like NASA had an engagement team that had $143 million of funding. That was cut completely to get more kids interested in science. So as far as NASA is concerned, they are increasing the budget to put people on the moon, put people on Mars, and they're cutting science by like a factor of a half. And if you go and look at even more of the details of in the science budget, if you go and you look at Earth science, cut in half from 2.1 billion to 1 billion. Planetary science, not cut that much. So this is going to be like weather stuff. Sorry, no, planetary science is other things. So planetary science includes the New Frontiers mission, which is like the big mission that NASA's doing right now. This is to send a a drone to Titan, if I remember correctly. That has a budget of $500 million. But the planetary science division got a cut of $900 million from 2.7 billion. The astrophysics division, the James Webb, things like that.
Yeah.
Astrophysics got a cut from 1.5 billion to 500 million. So they got cut by 67%. With the physics of the cosmos division, subdivision of astrophysics, this is like examining trying to figure out where did the universe come from, these kinds of things, had a budget of nearly 200 million. It was essentially cut. It has a budget of now 1.5 million. So it just seems like in this budget, we're just like slashing science all over the place in this budget. Like it's just like this is like an anti-scientific bill, right?
Sure. It would appear that way. My question is, how much of the science that we've cut was actually useful science? Like you mentioned, the last one that you mentioned was the origin of the cosmos, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
let me give you an example of something that was cut from that.
Sure.
Something that's proposed to be cut from that. So there's a telescope called the Chandra X-ray Observatory. It's a space telescope. It's already in space. It's been in space for 25 years or so. It was launched in the late 90s. And what it does is it's in the name. It's a telescope that can see in the X-ray part of the spectrum. Now, it's still operational, perfectly operational. People have been doing perfectly good science. That project is just being completely killed. So there will be no funding for it going forward. So it'll just be a dead telescope floating in space.
Okay. What data was that telescope giving us? Just curious.
It was the most accurate telescope for the X-ray part of the spectrum. So, for example, one of the things that it did 10 years ago was it basically gave us proof that dark matter is real. A few years ago, it gave us proof. It gave us proof about, or it gave us, it's a telescope, so it doesn't give us proof. It takes pictures, right? It told us about what's going on in the atmosphere of Jupiter. And keep in mind, the X-ray emissions of the atmosphere of Jupiter. And keep in mind, we want to land stuff on the moons around Jupiter, so knowing what's going on with the X-rays there is useful. So this is a telescope that it cost about $10 to $20 million to run. Just basically, you're just funding scientists to keep it operational, keep it in contact with all of our data taking equipment, and then just to fund projects that use that data. And it's just being killed. And that. And I should also mention, this is the best telescope for X-ray. This is the best X-ray telescope that exists.
Okay.
It just seems like a waste.
It seems like a waste to shut down the program, I'm assuming.
Yeah. It's a drop in the bucket to fund it. $20 million is like nothing. Keep in mind, that's like 7 cents per American citizen per year. And it was an American telescope, and it was the best in the world, and we're just throwing it away.
I guess I would just. How long was the telescope operational for?
It's been operational since I think 99, maybe 98.
Okay, so yeah. How much more are we likely to learn that we haven't already if we do keep it operational?
People were publishing data or publishing papers using data from it as recently as this year.
Okay. But this is data that we've been collecting for over 20 years at this point.
Well, right. So it's not pointing at one thing. It's a telescope, so it can point at different things. And so recently, this was in 2024 when they did this study when somebody got telescope time to study Jupiter, and they were examining the source of X-ray emissions from Jupiter, so they could learn what's going on with the X-rays around Jupiter. It's a telescope. It's a kind of an all-purpose X-ray telescope. It can just point at different things.
Right.
To learn about those things and get new data.
Okay. This is probably going to sound a little selfish, but I'm just going to say I don't think the average American citizen cares about the atmosphere of Jupiter. And so I think generally people are saying we're spending this much money on this telescope, 20 million or whatever, and I'm not getting any direct benefit from this, so why would I bother funding it? I think this is generally where most of the science cuts come from, is the average citizen is like, I'm not seeing a direct impact on my well-being, or I don't see how this is going to help me, so why would I bother spending money on this?
Okay, that would be a great explanation if we weren't increasing funding to put people on the moon.
Right, well, the moon is also a lot closer and a lot more potentially habitable than
a lot
Jupiter.
More expensive. No, it's not. Titan, which is a moon of Jupiter, is way more likely to be inhabitable than the moon. The moon is super hostile to people.
Well, it's also in the orbit of the only habitable planet in the solar system.
Right, but it's it doesn't have an atmosphere, right?
In Jupiter, and Titan does?
Yeah.
I mean, it might. Actually, I don't know.
Yeah, Titan does. That's why we're sending a probe there.
I see. What is the atmosphere constructed of? I'm actually curious.
On Titan, I think it's mostly methane. But the point is it has an atmosphere, so you won't just you won't immediately be exposed to the vacuum of space, right?
That's true. I always pictured.
Oh no, actually, I'm sorry. It's mostly nitrogen, like ours.
Yeah, I just think it's mostly nitrogen with some significant amounts of methane.
So
95% nitrogen, which Earth atmosphere is 70% nitrogen.
Yeah, Earth has oxygen and Titan doesn't, but it's at least it's not toxic. It has atmosphere, so we could just walk around out there with a breathing mask on, right?
Right.
But it's also really cold, so that's a separate issue. But the point is that if it were a question as to, does this influence, is this going to benefit me directly? Sending people to the moon isn't going to benefit you directly. Sending people to Mars isn't going to benefit you directly. Now there might be indirect benefits, sure, but there are no direct benefits. Both studying the X-ray emissions of Jupiter's poles or sending people to the moon. And the reason why, and this is the only reason why it's got to be, why the MAGA and Republicans and Trump and the Senate Judiciary, or not Judiciary, sorry, the Senate Space Committee or whatever, the only reason why they're budgeting for increase in exploration is, well, I guess there could be 2 reasons. One, exploration is very profitable to space companies. because NASA doesn't really launch on its own anymore. It launches using space companies. It
Right.
still does launch occasionally, but not so much. And second, it's a spaceship measuring contest with China, is what it seems like it is.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's why we went to the moon in the 60s, right? Because we were in a Cold War with Russia, or with the USSR, I should say. And we were in a space race. And this just seems like it's another space race, which they're not concerned with. They're not concerned with, like, the moon landings were great for scientific exploration, like, all things considered. It wasn't super necessary to send people there, and that made it way more expensive. And it didn't benefit anybody, right? So, like, if your argument is like, oh, well, I only want to fund things that benefit me, it doesn't hold up with this budget.
Right, and I guess I would probably be more in favor of cutting exploration a little bit more too, because I can understand where you're coming from. You know, we want the space companies want to make more money, right? Obviously, and I think a lot of this has to do with Elon being closely tied to the government, and he's all about Mars and sending rockets up there. So I guess what we should be more concerned about in this current political climate, which, and I know this is straying a little bit from the original topic, but people's lives are obviously getting worse, and we're not, things are getting more expensive. We're seeing a rise in mental illnesses. I think we should probably turn our focus to helping the people while they're still here, as opposed to worrying about where we're going to put them 50 years in the future. I guess that would just be my general ideology.
So if that was your view, and if that was the view of MAGA Republicans, that could even be commendable. But that's clearly not it, because our budget isn't getting smaller. We're not increasing social welfare. We're not increasing programs that would help people. We're increasing defense spending. The budget for the DoD, the proposed budget for the proposed defense budget for 2026 is $1 trillion.
Yeah, I would say
if I remember correctly, that is the highest it's ever been. So we're increasing. So it's 13% higher than it was last year. So we can work out the math. That's about $100 billion. You could have used that extra $100 billion to fund NASA entirely, fund NASA 5 times over.
Okay, I would argue that military defense is a little more directly beneficial to us than NASA at the current moment. But all that aside,
is it?
He's giving us what, $1,000 per kid now, and he got did he do the food stamps, or was that someone else? I can't remember. I think Trump is doing a lot more to help people than you're giving him credit for.
So the spending is increasing. Social welfare programs are getting cut. Science is being cut. Environmental protections are being cut.
I don't know.
Look, you could argue for like tax policy or whatever, maybe that would help. The point is that they're just not interested in funding science. And keep in mind, the science budget of the US is like a drop in the bucket. Like back in the Cold War era, during the Apollo missions, NASA's budget was 5% of GDP. Now it's less than 1%.
And yeah, this is straying away from the topic at hand, and I'm going to concede this point. It's not, and again, my views are obviously not all of MAGA Republicans' views. I would probably like to see a little bit more,
that,
but I'm not well versed enough in this particular area of the bill to speak on this directly. So I will concede that maybe we should be, maybe the science is helpful, maybe. Maybe the science we're cutting is helpful, and we should be putting it back. I don't know.
It's worrying to me, and I appreciate that. I appreciate that you say that. It's worrying to me because scientists have been screaming at the top of their lungs for the last few months because of this bill.
Right.
And it's worrying to me that nobody's paying attention. So much so that you didn't know about this.
Yeah.
I mean, like generally speaking, like if this was another country and you didn't know anything about the internal politics, all you knew is that if you take one political party in the group, and that political party is less likely to accept climate change as a real thing, less likely to accept evolution as a real thing, less likely to be interested in funding science, less likely to think that medical science is worth spending money on, less likely to think the Earth is more than 10,000 years old, and the other party is more likely to do all of those things, would you say that the party that's less likely to do all of those things is anti-science?
That's hard because, like, when we say science, that's a very general term,
Yes.
right? Because science, as you just told me, is including earth science, space science, political science, right? Well, that's not really.
Well, I'm talking about hard sciences, things like
Right, sure.
up to and including neuroscience and physics and geology. We could debate about whether sociology is a science, but that's neither here nor there.
It's not relevant. I just think, from what I've heard and seen, the type of science, the hard science that we've been doing recently, even going back to the 70s, has not been super beneficial to society, and
Are you
therefore
sure?
is not. Yeah, like all the psychology stuff has been
It's
terrible.
not a hard psychology is not generally treated as a hard science.
Even all the climate stuff. I wouldn't say it's harmful for society, but I do think it's shifted us in a direction that isn't going to be super.
So to be clear, the climate scientists of the 70s is the reason why the ozone layer isn't getting bigger anymore.
Yeah, but 40 years ago they were saying, "Oh, California is going to sink into the ocean if we don't get down our CO2 emissions," and we still have California.
That's misinformation. So if you actually look, it is, unfortunately, and it's been repeated so much that people just believe it now. If you actually just go look at like the prominent climate models starting in the 70s, and this was actually analyzed by, like, there was a meta-analysis by Berkeley like 3 or 4 years ago. If you look at the climate studies that starting at like even as early as the late 70s up until about the mid 2010s, there are like 17 like big climate models that have been cited frequently, and of them 14 of them were right. 14 of them made accurate temperature predictions in their scope. 3 were wrong, and 2 were wrong because they made incorrect assumptions about human behavior. For example, one of the earliest ones was from 79, I think, and they made the prediction that temperature would increase significantly faster than it has been. Sorry, it may have been 87, not 79. But the reason why they were wrong is because the next year after the model came out, the world came together and we banned CFCs. We banned CFCs because they were destroying the ozone layer, but they're also really potent greenhouse gases. And so he couldn't predict, the author of the study couldn't predict that humans would ban this. And so he just assumed that humans would continue to emit CFCs at the same rate. And so that would have led to an increase in temperature faster. So he was wrong. He was doing science well. He just didn't predict human behavior. So the point is that once you, like, even not accounting for human behavior, 14 of the 17 were right. Accounting for human behavior, 16 of 17 were right. So like it's just false that like that they've been wrong that they were wrong 40 years ago. They're just not.
Okay.
And by the way, if you want to see the study on that, I can actually show you. It's quite interesting to read.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, let me pull it up. I have it somewhere. It's from. Here it is. So this is just a summary, but it links to the real article, so you can pull that up at a later date if you want to read it. Oh, you can't say. Oh, I'll share my screen, but I'm going to share it for everybody else too, who's watching on YouTube and on TikTok. Where is it? Oh, it's being annoying. I have to remove and then re-add existing browser. Nope, that's the wrong one. Here we go. So this comes out of UC Berkeley, and I'll just share my screen for you as well. Window, it's this one. Yeah, so this was 2019, I guess. I guess it was like 6 years ago, not 4 or 5. But essentially, they're just talking about the 17 climate models that were published between the 90s and the late 2000s. And it mentions how 14 were quite accurate in predicting the average global temperature in the years after publication. And, you know, there's actually like a study, like they actually do the analysis. You can go pull that up. It's fairly easy to find, but that's the rough story.
Okay. I'm gonna have this up on a different window so I can go and read it after the fact.
Okay.
Spell Berkeley right. Berkeley. There we go.
But
Okay.
To your larger point, that the science since the 70s hasn't really helped us. I mean, like, the basic physics research has allowed us to do like positron emission tomography, and that came from particle accelerators.
Yeah.
And that's like a way that we like can do cancer diagnosis.
It's true.
People like I don't know how you can say that like, oh, scientific research hasn't really helped us in the last 50 years. Like, of course it has.
Oh,
Did you
saying
look at the
all.
70s?
I'm not saying all 70s science was bad. There was a lot of really good science going on. And I guess I didn't realize what your take on psychology was. I wasn't sure if you were going to try and argue it as a hard science or not. Because that's where my main contention is. And
I mean, even if we look at, so I mean, like we could even like speculate, like psychology. Like we have a lot better understanding of things like BPD and things like ADHD and things like depression and things like anxiety, and we know how to deal with those better. So like it seems like that, you know, we can handle those issues more effectively now, right?
Right, but it also led to the rise of all the gender stuff that we have now, which, if we want to talk about that, we can. That's something that I find to be a little shaky, but
Psychology gave rise to the gender stuff?
yeah, so like Sigmund Freud back in like the 60s and 70s posited the
Sigmund
idea
Freud wasn't alive in the 60s and 70s.
Hang on, am I like...
Sigmund Freud is an early 20th century psychologist.
Where did he
He
get
died
to?
he died in 1939.
Yeah, okay. Where was...
Also, by the way, chat called it.
It was Nietzsche. Hold on.
Nietzsche died in he lived in the 1800s.
Did he? Man.
Yep.
I don't know history. This is bad. This is not a good showing. Whoops.
Oops.
Yeah, whoops.
Nietzsche also wasn't a psychologist.
Who was it? John Money, that's another one. He probably wasn't.
John Money was in the 60s. Or maybe 50s?
60s. He did a lot of his research in the 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Well, anyway, where was I going with this? Oh yes, all the research. His research was really bad. First of all, I think you can agree with
maybe that. So I haven't read his research, but from what I've heard,
when I say bad, I don't mean
like
like it was unscientific. I mean it was just like horrific.
Yeah, so I do understand that he did like an experiment. He did like human experiments, and we don't like human experiments generally. Generally not fond of those. That is what he did, right? But like, let's say that there was like this, like, okay, actually, let's think about this. Back up a minute. How much money do you think has gone towards funding psychological research? Specifically with regards to studying gender, like in a scientific way.
Like recently, or
in the last
generally?
50 years? What percentage of psychological research do you think has gone? What percentage of money gone to psychological research studying gender? I don't know why I can't phrase this right. Basically, there's all of psychological funding that we've given, which is not very much, by the way. Like, there's there's some grants, but not very much. And then what fraction of the total psychology spending that the American public has done, what fraction of that do you think went to gender stuff?
I don't know, like maybe around 1%.
It's got to be tiny, right? Because most psychologists don't study. So what you're arguing for is irrelevant.
It's also picking up speed. Modern times as we have more.
Yeah, maybe that's true. I mean, it's being cut right now, but maybe that's true. But that's because it's becoming a more evident part of society, right? So if there's more people who are having such and such experiences, then it seems like we should study that.
Right, but is it good for the people? I mean,
studying it? Is studying it good for the people?
Is continuing the idea of it good for people?
Look, we're talking about like scientific studies, right?
Right, and yeah. So
is it good that we study this phenomenon?
Maybe not, because I don't think it's super helpful.
That's anti-science.
I don't even.
You're saying, yeah, we shouldn't study this thing that's becoming a bigger and bigger part of human society.
You know, the thing that's harmful for society, we shouldn't study.
Wait, so maybe it's not crazy if you could prove that like studying something causes harm, but it is
I'm not saying the
anti-science.
studying is harmful. I'm saying the result of these experiments is harmful.
Well,
The
to be clear,
idea-
I don't think people are actually doing human experiments. You have to go through a lot of hoops to be able to actually run experiments on humans anymore.
True. But I just mean societally generally. Trans ideology is bad for society.
What is trans
Because we're
ideology, and what does that have to do with psychology, like psychology spending and psychological research?
Well, we're trying to do research on what makes a person trans, right? Like, what part of the brain can we find that
Well, yeah. I mean, like,
dictates this kind of...
I mean, look, like there are people who claim that they have this experience, and we're trying to figure out why. Why do they have this experience? Why do they, and maybe you claim that they aren't actually having it, they're just saying it. Why is this happening? That's something that, well, we can't like, clearly you don't just want it to just happen. Shouldn't we try to figure out what's going on? Like, why is this happening?
I think we know why it's happening already, and we're just trying to ignore the implications.
So when you say we know, do you mean like the scientific community knows, or do you mean that
I think people generally
politicians know?
I think people generally.
Okay, so is that a well-informed opinion?
The general
opinion that you're referring to. So let me actually, what do you think is causing it?
Well, I think it's a couple things. I think it's coming back. I'm going to come back to these psychologists. These psychology papers from the 60s and 70s that were started in like Europe that came over and were widespread in American media. And I think people jumped on the bandwagon, a lot like the whole anorexia thing the other guy brought up. Now, we know anorexia is obviously a very harmful and bad thing, and we know we can help it. I think this is the new fad where people are saying,
now is this based on evidence? This claim?
I mean, we've seen
that it's a fad?
Increase. We've seen a huge increase in trans youth, have we not?
Sure.
So so I would say that's indicative of some kind of societal trend.
Not necessarily. Would you? I mean, like this is like as a counterpoint, we saw a huge uptick in the number of left-handed people in the mid 1900s. Was that because of a societal trend?
Well, there's a big difference between left-handedness and thinking you're the opposite gender.
The point still stands that it wasn't a fad. It was because we stopped slapping people's hands when they wrote with their left hand.
Okay, but that's something that's determined by your genetics. Being trans is not determined by your genetics. And you can.
How would we know unless we study it?
Because I don't think it's worth studying.
Okay, there is a thing. Look. Okay, and this is not only anti-trans. This is just like a bad idea. You don't like. It seems that you don't like that more and more people are having like trans experiences or are like trans, right? You don't think that that's a good thing for society, and you're saying we shouldn't study why. If you think this is harmful to society and you want to make it not happen, if you want to fix the issue, you should want to study it.
Okay, we can go back and look at how society functioned thousands of years ago and say society was, more, what's the word I'm looking for? Because we're seeing the decline in the birth rates, right? We're going from like 2.5 to 1.5.
Mm-hmm.
And we're seeing an increase in depression over the last 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not going to try and argue that people back thousands of years ago were happy, but I am going to argue that I think society was a little bit healthier back then.
Well, the average life expectancy was lower, and that's even excluding infant mortality. Like people just died of things that they didn't have to die of back then.
Sure.
So like they definitely weren't healthier.
I don't mean healthier and like physically healthy. I mean mentally healthier.
You mean mentally healthy? Maybe they were. Maybe we also just didn't keep records of mental health because that just wasn't the thing people were concerned with.
Right. So why? Well,
the point is we can study this now, and if you think that there's a problem, like look, if there was a new disease, not talking about COVID, if there was like a new bacteria or something that was that was like new and we hadn't studied it, and people thought it was harmful because like they saw their family members dropping over dead left and right, you would be the guy saying, no, we shouldn't study it. That might just make it worse. Like, even if you think it's a bad thing, You have to study it if you want to figure out what's causing it, right?
Again, big difference between bacteria and trans people, but okay.
Well, yeah, I agree. I don't think that trans people are generally harmful, but
Well, not generally physically harmful, but
in fact, they tend to make good software engineers, by the way.
hmm.
I don't know why, but there's just a trend of trans women who are really good software engineers. That was a joke, by the way.
The nerdy man, right? So where am I at right now? That's a good question. Oh yes. Okay. So studying things is a good thing. I think we can agree on that. But
Yep.
I think when we try to study things that we have seen have a negative impact on the way society functions, like the trans thing, I don't think that's something worth studying. I can't see in what universe.
Do you think that
figuring out
decreasing
what makes-
funding for studies that involve trans people will make the problem better or worse?
decreasing
The
funding
problem
for
in your
studies
eyes.
that involve
Yeah.
trans people?
Do you think that it'll fix the issue that you see?
I mean, maybe.
Really?
I don't see how it could make it better.
Well, look, if your claim is true, that this is just a trend, and that it's actually like a negative trend, if it's comparable to like anorexia or whatever, then the only way to establish that would be to scientifically examine it. And then, once we have objective proof, or objective evidence that that is the case, then you'd be able to start implementing evidence-based policy. But it seems like you're afraid that if we study it more, the evidence won't come out in your favor, and it's actually not, doesn't actually hurt society. It's actually like, fairly typical thing for humans to do, and it's just another part of the human experience.
I don't think the anecdotal evidence would match up with that, which I know you don't think is necessarily like great evidence, but I'm just saying we can see a collapse in the birth rate. We can see a decline in people's
Do you think
happiness.
that has to do
generally.
with trans people?
Oh, I think it has a lot to do because I think.
Well, I mean, that's not the
decline
case.
in
It has to do with
depression, I think it
industrialization.
Oh, of course. I think.
Well,
an
no,
uptick in
like
depression-
obviously it does. Poor countries tend to have higher birth rates than rich countries. That's not like this is not a recent thing. That's always been the case, at least for the last 200 years or so. And like,
right.
So and trans people haven't even been visible for like prior to like the 50 years ago. So like how this is a completely unrelated phenomenon.
Right, and now that we've started facilitating young people getting these, gender affirming surgeries, we're seeing an uptick in depression. We're seeing decline in the birth rate. I don't think.
Wait. To be clear, depression was increasing before the what you might call the trans movement, right? Like this is like you're trying to say the trans movement is at fault for all of these things. You're getting the causation backwards potentially.
So when do you think the uptick in depression started?
I don't actually know if there was ever an uptick. My guess is there was probably just an uptick in diagnoses, but we can even just look this up. We can just like look like what is the depression rate in the U.S. and how has it changed. So in the last 20 years, it's gone from 6.5% to like 7.2%. Sorry, no, that's only from 2005 to 2015. I want something a little bit longer than that. Yeah, we want something.
2021, 29% in 2023.
So between 20, okay, hold on. This is BH related and okay, that's something else. So anxiety, depression, and stress between 2000 and 2016 went from that can't be right. Oh, I guess that these are inpatient visits. So these are hospitalizations regarding those things. Went from about 1% to about 3% of hospitalizations.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, like, I might even agree with you. But here's the thing: this upward pointing trend started before anybody even knew what a trans person was.
But
so if you think that like that trans ideology is the cause of this, like you're getting the time ordering backwards.
I'm on a Gallup poll right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're at 29% in 2023. That is a huge jump from the 8% that it was in 2021, or even bigger than the 3% that it was in 2016.
Yep, I'd believe that.
Okay.
Well, wait a minute. Wait, hold on.
so-
I'm looking at this. I'm looking at the same Gallup poll, and it
Okay.
was 19.6% in 2015. It was, and it's 29% in 2023. It was 23% in 2020, and it spiked by like 5% after COVID, which checks out.
Yeah, that checks out, right?
Prior to COVID, it was basically steady. And after COVID, it's been basically steady. So I'm just looking at this. I'm looking at the same chart that you are. Like, it just doesn't. I mean, like, I can agree that like our world is getting arguably worse. I don't think that you can blame that on trans people, though. Trans people make up
It's
like
not
1%
so, I mean,
of the
and
population.
they're not solely to blame either. I'm just saying, over medication and.
But it can't be them, because they make up less. They make up like 1% of the population, maybe 3% of the population. And so if we're saying that 29% of the population has had depression, then that means that even if every single trans person had depression, there would have to be 26% other, like 26. It'd have to be, the rest of the population would have up to 26% rate, right? Like.
Well, according to this, trans movement origins were in the 50s and 60s, which checks out with.
Right, but okay, when did you learn what
trends
a trans person was?
When did I learn?
Mm-hmm.
Like high school maybe.
What year?
That would have been like 2017.
Yeah, okay, mid 2010s. That's when like people became. That's when this idea of trans people entered the public sphere. I mean, obviously trans people existed before that, but the idea, like, it didn't enter politics. It didn't really enter public discussion until like the mid 2010s, perhaps. The early 2000s, the late 90s. That question was being the social question being discussed then was, like gay rights, right? So like, yes, trans people existed in like a long time ago, and have existed for basically forever. But like in the public sphere outside of queer spaces, trans people have been basically invisible up until the mid 2010s.
Okay.
So like the broader societal impact, like to say that, and I mean, you could even look at the percentage of people who are outwardly trans, and you'll see that it was very, very small prior to, maybe the 2000s or something like that.
Right.
And so it just can't be causing these things that you think it's causing.
I mean, well, that's further supports that it's a fad. If it didn't start becoming public eye until 2010s, now
Or it supports that it became more accepted.
So like anorexia, which didn't, existed
yeah.
before
So
the huge jump in the
comparing
80s and then
anorexia,
was bad. I'm just saying it's
to
correlation.
the transgender experience only works if you can prove that they're both harmful. Now, anorexia, I think we can agree is harmful. The question is whether it's harmful to be trans, and I don't think that there's any study that bears that out.
So being trans isn't harmful.
No, I mean, like, it may come with comorbidities. Like if you're trans, you're more likely to be depressed. But you could say that if you have ADHD, you're more likely to have autism. But that doesn't mean that autism causes ADHD or vice versa.
Right.
They're just like correlated things. This is to say,
and trans people are correlated with a higher rate of depression, higher rate of suicide.
Yeah.
Even higher.
And so
they gotta go and get all these procedures.
Yeah.
I think we can see there's a correlation between the ideology and.
Hold on. No. You're making a mistake. You're making a reasoning mistake. It's a correlation between their existence. It's not an ideology. It's just like trans people exist. Trans people have higher rates of XYZ. The question is why do they have higher rates of that? Well, we can study that, but you don't want to study that. So.
Okay.
Like, the trans people are going to exist. They currently exist. There is a current like epidemic of like depression and anxiety amongst trans people. Absolutely a thing. If you cared about people, you should be interested in trying to figure out why. Why is there so much depression and anxiety and even suicidality amongst trans people? Because they're people. We should try to figure out why they're experiencing this. And just saying, oh, it's because they're trans, well, that's not borne out by the evidence. We need to actually figure out a cause.
They're taking are causing them to be depressed.
Okay, so study that. But as far as I know, there are no studies that indicate that.
I mean, you don't. It's pretty apparent when you look at.
This is an anti-science view. Oh, it's just obvious. No, do the science.
Oh my gosh. Have you listened to any detransitioners' testimonies?
Yep.
Okay.
Testimony doesn't go very far in science, though, so take it with a grain of salt.
Okay.
I mean, you recognize that, right?
I'm going to tend to value the stories of the people who've lived through it more than the scientists who are getting paid to create a certain outcome.
Ding, ding, ding. There it is. There's the anti-science. The science
I'm
is
assuming-
corrupt because they're getting paid due to an ideology. That's what you're saying.
Well, that's just how it works. I mean,
Okay, provide evidence for
so
that
you
claim.
think? Hang on. You think all scientists are non-biased 100% of the time?
I never said that. You made a claim about the institutions and the scientific community. Of course, individuals are susceptible to, bribes, are susceptible to influence and so on. The question is that the case for the entirety of the scientific community?
Maybe we should study it.
Yeah, that's what sociologists do. Do you want to increase funding to sociology?
Yeah, sure. Let's go.
Okay, great. Call your representative. Tell them to increase funding to university sociology
Figure out if
departments.
the scientists are corrupt. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, call your universe or call your representative. Tell them to increase funding to places like Harvard so that they can afford more sociologists.
Yeah. Okay.
Grant more government grants for sociology degrees and for sociology PhD programs. I'm totally on board. We should study all the things.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay. Anything else you want to talk about, Ethan?
No, I do have to go to work here pretty soon. So.
All right. Sounds good.
Appreciate
Thanks
the
for being here.
conversation. Yeah, of course. Didn't have the best showing, I will admit. Got a lot of stuff proved to myself that I didn't know before. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate what you've done.
I appreciate the honesty. Have a good one, Ethan.
Yep.
We have some super chats to read. Lots of super chats to read. From Austin Leitz with the $10, thank you. Who should determine what's important in science? Scientists or ideology-driven politicians? Short-sighted non-science people should not be dictating science policy or funding. Yeah, I agree. That's my point. Like, I don't think that, like, I'm very anti-technocracy because I think that scientists aren't necessarily good policymakers. However, whoever is making the policy, they should be getting their information from the scientists, from the people who are experts in the field, or from the economists, or from the, the sociologists, whatever. If you're trying to make a policy that that presupposes some fact of the world, you should make sure that your fact of the world is reinforced with evidence. From CJ with the $5, thank you. Bro, the bill makes so many cuts that directly impact people, all while increasing the deficit. Yeah, it does. From Abeson, $5, thank you. I think the caller believes the increase in trans identification is driven by academics or clinicians. Yeah, I think he does believe that, but there's no evidence supporting that. So, I did say Aaron Leitz, by the way, not Austin, I think. From Abeson, again, he's conflating funding research with causation. Absolutely true. Dirk Diggler with the $5. I wonder why he's so focused on trans people. Could it be that it's just another MAGA bigot? He's demonstrating how MAGA is so hate-filled. Look, so I hesitate to call him just like a hate-filled bigot because A, that's not a good way to win people to your side, and B, it's very easy to hold those views when that's the information that you have. So I think exposing people to good information is a good way to get around that, to kind of deprogram people. And also, it could also be like a bigot thing. Like, who knows? I'm not maybe he is. Maybe he's just like hate-filled. But the point is that the point of this live is not to make any policy prescriptions. It's just to remind people that there is a side that generally likes doing science and generally appreciates it. And when you come up here and you say things that are not backed up by scientific evidence, like, oh, this is a fad, and oh, it's just obvious. Well, then do the research. You have to spend money to do the research. So you have to actually do the science. And if you just don't trust the science, then nobody should take you seriously. Now, from Abeson, we have $2. Discriminated groups have higher depression rates. Yeah, that's true. Turns out, who would have thunk, right? And from CJ with the $5, we have, turns out, MAGA just wants an excuse to be bigoted. Yeah, so I actually don't know. on the one hand, I generally think people are good people. On the other hand, I think it's very easy to have the information that you receive lead you to conclusions that end up harming other people. Like that guy. I don't think that Ethan's a young guy. I think he's been exposed to information that's just not good, and his intuition has been shaped in a way that leads him to come to bad conclusions. I don't think that he is like a hate-filled, or like I don't think he has like hate in his heart and he'd love to see the gassing of the trans people. Like, I don't think that's true. I just think that he's been, the information he's been given has led him to bad conclusions that hurt people. Anyway, you guys are too doomer. I think generally most people are good people. That's not everybody, but most people are good people. Anyway, it is 12:15, and we have been live for 3.5 hours, and that means that I should end the live. So for everybody who's been watching, everybody who's enjoyed, thank you guys so much for being supporting. Thank you guys so much for watching and liking if you're watching on YouTube or if you're watching on TikTok. Thank you guys for subscribing if you're on YouTube, for following if you're on TikTok, for, ringing the bell is a thing that you should do. Oh, actually, I have one more thing to read. Apparently, a friend of mine has informed me that gender was invented by John Gender when he tried to sell 2 bathrooms at once. Yeah, it's true. John Gender, inventing the gender. Anyway, y'all, thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for a peer review.